Wow. That's hard.
That's 2 hours.
And then the food stamps?
I want to take attendance though, if you want to just.
Well, I know they had a staff meeting last week, and they were gonna try to figure out how they're gonna get our kids fed and stuff, so it's like,
Okay, it's 9 a.m., so I'm going to get this meeting underway because we have a lot to discuss today. So if you could all join me, I'd like to believe this, and I don't know that they all do. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with introductions, so we'll start with you, Tim.
Timothy Silvernail, Budget Committee.
Lisa Toll, Budget Committee?
Chris Fowler, Budget Committee.
Elaine Bovier, Budget Committee.
Diane Adinolfos, Selectman Rep to the Budget Committee. Laura Lambert, Select Board.
Scott McDonald, Select Board.
Kathleen Charles, Select Board and Library Trustee.
Roger Haley, Budget Committee.
John Childs, Budget Committee. Mark Solomanto, Budget Committee.
Deb Kearney, Budget Committee.
Julie Keeney, Budget Committee.
Keith Cost, School Board Rep to the Budget Committee. Jeff Nagus, Budget Committee.
Okay, thank you. And we have one resident, Peter DeSantis. And you'll hear from the department heads. Okay. So we're gonna go right into citizens' comment, Peter, and I guess you are our citizen.
Thank you for your service to our community.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, so before we start though, I just want to, a couple things. So housekeeping, you know, the restrooms are right outside of this door here. There's a restroom right there if you need it. And I would ask that we've got a lot to discuss, that we keep personalities outside of this meeting. We all are entitled to our opinions. So let's be respectful and, you know, look at numbers and not people. We're looking at positions. So how this is gonna work is we're gonna go through each as it is on the agenda. So we'll jump right into the police department, and that will be on page 12 of this thing that you've got. And then after the presentations are made by the department heads, I will ask the Board of Selectmen if they are comfortable with it, if they wish to vote on it, because Budget Committee cannot vote until we have recommendations or non-recommendations from the Board of Selectmen. Any questions? Good? All right. So we're gonna go right into the police department, and that is on page 12. Oh, one other thing. There are two forms. You've got the whole budget packet, which has all your narratives, and every single budget is in this packet, which I think is really nice, because we don't have all these different presentations and different formats that we're looking at. And the other one is, it's an analysis report. It's got, with the last column here where it says department is actually what the proposed budget is for the coming year. But we also have historical data on every line item. So all these numbers match what's in here. It's just a condensed, so you can at a glance see where the expenditures have been over the last couple of years.
I don't remember seeing that before, Melanie. Is that new?
This is very new, Kathleen.
I really like it.
Isn't it awesome?
I loved it when I saw that come.
Yeah,
through.
because it's, you know, you don't have to go digging into past reports and, you know, so I think it will be very helpful. So that being said, we're gonna turn the floor over to Chief Beth Towers, and if you could do the police department.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I know your backs are to the screen there, but I spent a lot of time on this fun PowerPoint, so if you could at least just kind of glance at it, so it's not for nothing. It is a very condensed version of the kind of the big narratives in the paperwork you've got, so this might be a little bit more helpful. I'll just quickly explain what every screen kind of looks like. It kind of got reformatted when we put it onto John's computer, so that's John's fault. But you'll see, in order for me to kind of understand coming into this new how to go forward with our budget for 2026, I had to understand where we were coming from, because there were a lot of years where things were just seemingly out of whack, at least in my mind. So every single budget line, I've gone back to 2022 to see what was budgeted, what we actually spent, what the difference was, and then on average, over those 4 years, how much have we either been over budget or under budget for that particular line item. As we go through it, some of them are gonna be skewed because there might be one year where we just absolutely blew the line completely out of the water by 20 grand. That's obviously gonna mess with the average a little bit, but I did take that into consideration as I went through. So, starting with this line item, support staff salaries, we are gonna be under budget this year. Jessica Taylor is our full-time admin assistant. She has worked her way to gold, could do the job of 4 secretaries, so we don't intend to fill an evening secretary position that we've had for many, many years. She would probably just be sitting there all night twiddling her thumbs. So that line right there, if there's not any questions, we should be under budget on that one. Okay, PD IT services. This isn't, I mean, it's gonna be underfunded a little bit unless we make an increase. This goes to Certified Computer Solutions. They do all of our, by contract, upgrades and repairs to the computer systems. We have a 24/7 offsite monitoring of our entire system. All of our PD records that we keep are backed up on our cloud regularly, so they take care of that. And every 5 years, they will replace our oldest desktop computer, whoever may have that, whether it's a patrol computer, admin, chief, sergeant, lieutenant, doesn't matter. We'll raise that line a little bit, just to make sure we can cover the cost. If you look down at 2025, we're gonna come in about 15.8. Okay, computers and software, this one is pretty significantly underfunded. The biggest chunk of this line is going to be TriTech Software, our Central Square. That is our IMC, that's our entire records management system. We have multi-agency, which allows us to be live in our computers, so we can pull up stuff from other agencies. We can run people, get their, when they're suspended. We can do all that stuff without having to go to our dispatch center for that kind of information. That 5255 is the invoice for 2026. So as you can see, that would take up a huge chunk of the 6,000 that we've been budgeting. The other thing is we have licenses for Target Solutions and Vector Solutions. That is our, I guess you'd say, repository for all internal affairs, field training, and tracking of all annual training. Those all together come to 774. And that doesn't include other things that may come up along the way. So that line's been adjusted to 9,100 to make sure we can continue to pay for those items that are needed.
So most of those items are contractual.
Yes. Yep. And some of them, I think, are based on the number of users. Some of them it's just, which doesn't matter because they're relatively small. So if the minimum is 20, well, we've got 11, so it wouldn't matter.
Do we know the last time those rates were negotiated?
I do not. I can check. Okay, our copier lease, we're good with that. I don't think there's any issues there, keeping it the same. Maintenance, repair of our radar and LiDAR. So each cruiser, with the exception of the chief's cruiser and the detective, has a radar in it. We also have a LiDAR, which is handheld and much more accurate. I kept this at 800 because if any unit needs any repairs, it starts at like $200 for the smallest thing. So if a couple of them need a repair throughout the year, that's gonna eat into that 800 pretty quickly. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. That's why I just kind of kept it at 800. Vehicle repairs, we have absolutely blown out of the water every year. Things happen. We have 4 line cars, the chief's car and the detective's car. We also have the side-by-side and the 4-up four-wheeler, or 2-up four-wheeler. So this includes all routine maintenance, safety inspections on all of them, which I anticipate we're still gonna do safety inspections for our cruisers, even though that requirement is going away for the general public. Just to make sure we're not missing something that needs to be repaired. Replacement of failed parts, brakes, tires, stuff like that. Sometimes they can patch a tire. Oftentimes if a tire blows, they have to replace all four. The other three are relatively good.
Excuse me a moment, Beth.
Yes.
Could you please let the record show that Vicky Cassidy is in attendance? Okay, sorry.
The other thing that this line covers is with every cruiser, we have what's called the upfit for all the police cruiser things, the lights, the sirens, all that kind of stuff. So anytime any of those go faulty or need repair, that also comes out of this line as well. So as you can see, the other thing too, when you look over at the average, if it's in parentheses, that means we were over budget. I think I might have done that backwards. So on average, we're over budget, or underfunded by 5,000.
You did not do it backwards.
I did
That's
it?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, you can see in 2023, I don't know what the heck we did with 20,000, almost 21,000, but that included a lot of things that I don't even know what those. Telephone and modem, this is our telephones, cable, and internet service, which we obviously need. It also includes our state police online telecommunication system, or SPOTS, that allows us to run all of our records, information that we need when we're looking up suspects and things of that nature. It went up quite a bit, because if you look at the bottom, what's been budgeted and what's actually been spent every year is consistently going up, and for the past 3 years, we've been around 5,500 to 6,500. So in order to keep up with that increase, I bumped it up to 6,000. All right, cell phones, we have 5 cell phones, 2 patrol phones when the officers are out on duty. They can call people back without having to drive all the way back to the police department to simply make a phone call if they're on duty. Our administrative assistant, she has a phone. Our detective has a phone. He has to make lots of phone calls, probably more than anybody else, and he's out and about a lot as well. I should have a phone to make up 5. I do not have a phone. I would kind of request that this, I've included it in the budget, but I would like to have a police chief phone. I don't have a cell phone. I'm not kidding.
Did the other chief have one?
Yes.
What happened to it?
We just didn't do it. Your default budget came close.
Oh.
I don't know. We don't have it. I'm going to get one regardless. If I have to pay for it myself, it doesn't matter, but I need a phone. So that's why that was increased to 5,700. Okay, this one is a tough one. Our recruitment and hiring is totally dependent on staffing levels. And as you can see from my little clip art there, the PD for the last several years has kind of been like a revolving door. And we can't really anticipate that. People come and go for various reasons. And when they do, and we have to rehire, these are the things that have to be paid for. Psychological exam is $450, that eventually will get reimbursed by police standards and training. Polygraph, will, depending on who does it, will range between $300 and $350. Medical drug tests are $205, so we're spending up to, and sometimes a little bit more than $1,000 per new officer when we have to hire them, just to get them through part of the background process with all these exams. So the past couple of years, we've, you can see we've gone from 2,800 to 45 to over 7,300. This coming year, we only are technically down 1 spot. We have not yet backfilled Chief Stark's position. But if anything were to happen, if we fill that, that's 1. If 2 people leave, we're back up to over 3,000 real quick. So I adjusted that up $1,000. Okay, dues and subscriptions, this I increased quite a bit. Our periodicals, which are like our Bibles, these were the New Hampshire Motor Vehicle Code and the Criminal Code. While you can, on the fly, if you have service, look up RSAs online, they don't come with the annotations, the case summaries, of the things that come at the end of the RSAs that are very, very helpful when you're looking at, are we gonna charge, not charge? We've scale goes down quite a bit over the past few years. Every officer used to get their own set, we don't do that anymore. Not every officer, every cruiser, the patrol room, every admin position. We're gonna get 4 sets now, but that is $1,000 for those periodicals alone. It also covers professional dues for the New Hampshire Chiefs of Police, IACP, Merrimack County Chiefs, New Hampshire Bar Association, and NASPID. So those all add up, and then the last little block there are our investigatory resources that are billed monthly or the year, depending on if it's by user or just a one-time payment. TLO, I apologize, don't know what it stands for. It's $1,400 a year, and that resource allows our detective to pretty much plug in any one of your names, and just shy of learning the shoe size of your college roommate. That's what that site will allow us to do. It's invaluable. I think it would be a big mistake to not have that as a resource. Same with Leads Online, that's about $1,700 a year. That allows us, if anybody's ever had anything stolen and pawned somewhere, we can go into Leads Online, and anywhere you pawn something, they're required by law to report it, everything gets tracked through Leads Online. So if your cell phone gets stolen and they take it to one of those eco things in the mall where you shove your phone in, we have access to that. We can see the picture of who did it, we can see whose ID. Like, it's just, again, one of those resources we don't wanna lose.
How long have we had those two services?
TLO is relatively new. I think we had it all of last year and then going into this year. Leads Online we've had for several years. I will say both of those used to come out of the computer and software line. I put them over here because I just felt it was more appropriate here than over there. I just moved them from one line to the other.
Okay, that explains one of my questions, because it did seem like a substantial increase,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
I definitely understand that they're valuable resources, but I would think even like those periodicals, I don't know, I just feel like this is a line that could be funded less. That's just my personal opinion. I think you could probably do like 2 copies of those. International Association of Chiefs of Police, like sometimes there's memberships that, I don't know how much you're getting from those memberships. I know it's nice to belong to everything has their own benefits, but I think we are gonna be looking at a really slim budget again this year, so if I was going to suggest a cut, that would be what I would suggest.
And you'll point out the line that the 2 services came from when you get to that line.
Yeah, did we already go over it? Was, we might not have gotten there. Yep, we went over, it came out of like the 3rd slide. So the other thing I will say is like a lot of these red
You were
lines,
asking for a $1,700 increase, but you're taking out
right, but that's because.
3,100.
Right, because the other line, computers and software, was also significantly underfunded. We put stuff in there, but we've also been down 3 to 4 salaries, so we've been able to pay for it. But if you look at the slide over here, we took it out of computer. Can you go back to that slide, Joe? It would be 341. I don't know. It's like the 3rd slide, I think.
And you can see in the history of the computers and software, granted it had some of these
Yeah.
items in it. I mean, in 2024, it was 21,000, and even in 2023, it was almost 8,000.
Right.
So you're definitely, walking
Yeah.
that line.
Yeah. So for 2026, I took the investigatory resources out of this line and put it under dues and subscriptions.
Yep.
But then going to this line, I actually requested what we've actually been spending, even without including those other 2 resources in this line. Because if you look at, IMC, TriTech Software, Target Solutions, all of our internal affairs, field training, that all totals $7,774. And that's without any, other increases or anything else that might pop up along the way. So even that 9,100 doesn't include 2 things that move to the dues and subscriptions. I think we're on tuition and training, John.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so with this one here, what I think I need to explain is that police standards and training, we used to only have like 8 hours of training required per year per officer. It had to do with firearms, first aid, and defensive tactics. That was the only requirement. Clearly not enough training for police officers in a year, so for the past few years, they've been adding more required training hours per year, and as of January 1st, 2025, each officer needs an additional 24 hours exclusive of firearms, first aid, and defensive tactics in order to keep their certification and to be in compliance, okay? Couple of the classes that we historically send people to and will need in 2026, we have 3 brand new officers that we always send all of our new officers to read, interview, and interrogation. They're like world renowned, it's an excellent class, I've been to it myself, it's 4 to 5 days, it includes a handwriting analysis, so you can tell when people are being deceptive, it's a tool that they utilize right off the bat because you're constantly talking to people and interviewing people. That class alone is around 700, I think the last one came in like 690 something. So for 3 officers to go this coming year, in their first year, that alone would be 2,100. I'm one of 2 TASER instructors. And every 2 years you have to get recertified as an instructor.
Go out, hit the red
Do you want
button.
me to hold up for a moment?
You did an excellent job with this, by the way.
Well, wait till you see Eric's.
No, yours looks better.
This is way better, I'm so upset.
The bird's pretty.
Yes, if I can talk about the bird.
There it goes.
Don't you love these birds?
Everybody loves
Here
it.
it comes. I think it's used to be interactive and you don't touch it. Right.
Oh, it went to sleep?
That's the
Oh.
one.
Well, this is loading out.
Yes.
The cell phone contract with AT&T, right, so $5,000, 5 cell phones.
Yeah, oh, there was also 3 air cards for our MDTs.
Those take
So
up the
that-
bulk of it?
Yes, that's everything together.
No, I mean, those 3 cards, they take up the bulk of that price.
I
That
don't
seems
have
really
the
high.
breakdown, I don't have the breakdown, but I can check on that as well.
I hate these boards.
At the bottom, John, you have a PowerPoint.
Get that one. Right, and I don't think it took a finger.
Why do you close the power? Maybe
Sorry.
The attrition rate has been seen by the police department. And we identified
Just a little slow, it's gonna process.
collectively between your training T&D from individual officers.
It's about 55,000,
Yeah, like annually,
yeah,
per individual.
per officer.
I like the picture.
Yeah.
Tuition and training, I think maybe back one, Joe? Forward one? No, you're right, forward one.
580, right there.
There we go, okay. So we talked about, the interview interrogation, as I was stating, I'm one of 2 TASER instructors for the police department, and every 2 years we have to get recertified. I am due by December 31st of this year. I did not go to the most recent class, I sent the other officer so that he could be, certified, but I'd be looking to do that, next year to keep my certification. I think there's a grace period where you can continue to get recertified, just can't teach the class, which is pretty lengthy. And everybody in the PD needs to be recertified every year as well, to include PowerPoint, tests, live shoots, scenarios, like reality scenarios, things like that. Let's see. Then we look at, if we're fully staffed, so assuming we have 11 sworn officers, that $7,000 would equate to about $636 to invest in each officer per year to cover 24 hours of training. Most classes are between 150 to 350. Some of those are 8-hour classes, some of them might be 16, or maybe a 3-day class for 24, and they've got it. Even with that amount, I anticipate having to supplement it with online free webinar training, which I'm not a fan of. I think it's far too easy for anyone really to sit there and scroll on their phone and not be invested in what they're looking at. So I try to avoid that. This past year, not really having a good, know where we're gonna go, we've deliberately been sending trip slips and falls on Primex, go do it, get some hours for something. That's what we've been trying to do, but it's not the quality level of training that I would like to have all of our officers attend every year. And there's a lot of stuff out there, sexual assault training, child abuse investigations, things that you really need to know what you're doing, because you could screw it up bad if you don't. Training and travel expenses, this has been budgeted for many years. We're usually under budget on this, but this does cover it. If there's a class down at Roger Williams, a lot of really good classes are held at Roger Williams. If we have it in the budget to do it, and it's a good class, we would have to pay for hotels, food reimbursements and stuff like that. So that's what that is there for a while, and even still, police standards and training doesn't offer all classes that one might want to attend. So when we have to look outside, if it's not offered in New Hampshire, we're going New England. Obviously, the IACP conferences are all over. Last year we lucked out, it was in Boston, so that was great. I just went to Denver a couple of weeks ago. The one conference I have not been going to for several years that I should be going to, in my opinion, is the alert conferences, so active shooter training. I do that here for the schools. I would go to do it for all you folks, different committees. That takes ongoing training as well, and that conference is pretty amazing. But that's what that line covers.
Do we use the service to help line that travel up, like Gantt or something?
No.
We just do it on our own?
I mean, Expedia is always pretty cheap, but I don't know if there's a cheaper way to go about it. If there is, then please let me know.
And I would just, like to throw out that I definitely agree, I see the importance, and I realize you have to travel sometimes, but this is another one of those budget lines that is, when the money's available, but in tight budget years, I think travel training should definitely be limited.
100%, and that's why I haven't gone to the alert conference in over 4 years, just.
And I see your numbers for this past year are very well,
Yeah,
like you've
we've been
definitely
paying
been
attention
mindful.
just to make sure we didn't add insult to injury anywhere, so.
How many officers are on staff right now?
10 from the top down, including a school resource officer who we can't pull to in patrol unless it's outside of his 7 to 3 Monday to Friday.
Elaine,
Yes.
if I could just ask everybody to remember the recording device is way over in the corner by the lane. We can speak a little louder so we're all recorded for the transcription. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, office supplies, no change there. I look back to 2023, 2025, no idea. I honestly have no idea. I think what was happening is we were probably buying a lot of office supplies in bulk. And maybe when you see a bunch, you use a bunch, and then you buy more, but Jessica's been in charge of this, and she stepped in, and we buy as we need, as we go, and we've seen a significant savings in regular office supplies, so I didn't see any need to increase that. I was weary of decreasing it in case we need stuff, just kind of hold the line for now. Training supplies, this mostly, probably 90% or better, covers firearm, ammunition, and taser cartridges. When we have new officers that have to go to the academy now requires what's called frangible ammunition that disintegrates upon impact so that it doesn't penetrate anything beyond. It's safer. You got a bunch of people out there, probably at least half of them have never shot before, so, and it's much more expensive. In 2024, our ammo costs were $2,600, taser supplies were close to $27, totaling $5,340. That in and of itself blows that $3,000 out of the water. In 2025, we were lucky. Apparently in 2024, we all shot pretty well and we saved some ammo during our quals and whatnot, so we were able to kind of carry that through. But we're going to need to repurchase supplies for 2026, or we will not be able to qualify and go through drills and do the things we need to do with our firearms training. Lieutenant Bowen, he's already looked into it. Ammunition for 2026 is gonna be about $3,000, so you can see it is climbing. Taser supplies are gonna also be close to $3,000, if not a little bit more, using the current model that we have. And I'll talk more about that later on. Go ahead.
That 29,000 in 2024, that kind of blew me, and then you mentioned you had extra supplies from 2024 that were able to see you through, so I was wondering, like, what happened?
So that there was, we got all new firearms with red dot sights and new holsters and everything, $9,000 right there.
Okay.
It actually was put onto the 2025 budget, but it should have been billed in 2024. So it got put back on the 2024, which is why it's blowing up that line. Even with that said, there was just a lot of things purchased.
Okay, so you've used your reserves, because I was wondering, I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
20,000, they might have a lot more reserves.
No, I honestly,
Yeah, okay.
and you'll see at the bottom, gross overspending in 2024 has skewed the average that we have been over budget, so. I increased it by 3,000. At the very end of this presentation, we're gonna talk about the TASER 10. If the budget passes and we're able to upgrade from these, then you obviously wouldn't need the $3,000 for these supplies in this line. So any other questions on this slide? Okay, general supplies. Nobody wants to run out of toilet paper, but we've got, again, very level funded. I have no issues with this line. Toilet paper, cleaning supplies, safety equipment, things like that, but again, we've done a good job of staying within budget on that, so no changes there. Postage, we don't mail a lot, brought down $100. You're welcome.
Every dollar counts.
Every dollar counts. Gasoline. All right. I did bring this down a little bit. We go to Irving Station and we have the Irving Rewards card, so after so many dollars or whatever, you get 10 cents off per gallon. We don't have anything like that for the mobile station. I can look into it, but we rarely, if ever, go to mobile. It's just available to us. It's obviously difficult to project fuel costs. You never know what's gonna happen. They could spike up depending on what's going on government-wise to $5 a gallon. It could drop. In 2025, we were down 3 to 4 officers. Well,
So that's
basically
why
4. So you think about 4 officers times 40 hours a week, that's 160 hours a week someone isn't driving a cruiser right now. So that's why our line is much lower right now. You add that back in, we're gonna be a heck of a lot closer to 17,000.
And this is one of those lines that I actually question your cut, because looking at your historical, I mean, you were at 16 and 23, you were over 17 and 24. Thank you for explaining that decrease in 2025, but I think we're expecting fuel prices to increase over the upcoming year, so I don't know if 17,000 would do it. I would recommend keeping this line level funded at the 19 to be on the safe side. That's just me.
Appreciate that. All good out there? All right, PD uniforms, again, this is not anything that's a constant. In 2020, the new hires cost basically $2,400 a piece, including their ballistics vest, to fully outfit them with their uniform, their jackets for the winter, everything they need for the academy. We have a uniform closet, incredibly hard to retrofit for 5'7" guy who left to the 5'2" person just hired. So that's obviously drastic, but they are tailored, so it is difficult for someone to walk down to the uniform closet and find something that actually fits and looks professional. So we try as best we can. The ballistics vests right now are about $1,400 a piece, and we're gonna need up to 4 of them in 2026. So the 2024 cost for the 3 vests we got for the 3 newest officers cost $4,500 right off the top. We do have the ballistics vest partnership grant. It just opened this month. They've changed the verbiage where it used to be that you could request reimbursement for vests already purchased. It doesn't say that anywhere. I put a phone call in, but I'm getting crickets because of the government shutdown. But what it's saying is to anticipate your ballistic vest needs for the next 2 years. So we're down 1 position, and we have 3 officers who between 26 and 27 are gonna need a new vest based on the 4-year life expectancy of the vest. So I've applied for that, in the process of applying for that grant. I just don't know if they will also reimburse for the last 3
I'm gonna guess
plus.
not.
I'm guessing not, but I'm keeping my fingers. So yeah, that's just,
Well, that's good that you're being proactive with that grant that way. Thank you.
yeah, it just came out. It usually comes out in April. I called in April. They're like, well, you're in luck, because I'm like, well, it's July. Can I still apply? They're like, well, we haven't put it out yet.
So Beth, the
Yes.
uniforms though, looking at 2024, was that miscategorized last year, because it was over 16,000?
Yep, so that is part of it, so we had to put that $4,500, subtract that out. I think we did get some back that went on the revenue side from that grant.
Okay.
But the ones we bought in 2025, I don't know that we're gonna get reimbursed for those. And then there's obviously other things in that were purchased in 2024, unless I went back to the line by line, I couldn't off the top of my head.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, full-time salaries, so obviously with the step increases going through and whatnot, this is what we're looking at for, that should say requested in 2026, I don't even know if that's correct. John, is that line correct?
Yes,
It is?
just a typo, it should be 20, requested in 2026.
Okay, but the number's correct, it's saying, okay. So right now, we have 10 out of the 11 sworn positions that are working at the police department. 5 of those sworn officers have 9+ years of experience and have not jumped ship or gone through that revolving door. And those are the, we wanna keep everybody, but you definitely wanna keep your highly sought after, well-trained, experienced officers. So the steps are definitely helping with that. The school resource officer salary is grant funded, only for the hours that they are actually in the school, not for anything that they work for the PD outside of that 7 to 3, Monday through Friday. So anything outside of SRO has been budgeted into this line for that 1 position, okay? We've all talked about what it costs to replace officers, $55,000 every time somebody leaves Allentown, and that's with them doing nothing, providing no services, not being able to answer a phone call on their own. This line does assume a step increase in 2026, that's budgeted in. And again, full-time salaries historically has been under budget because we've been down so many people. What you'll see is a spike on the overtime when we get to it.
Beth, I have a
Yes.
question on the SRO.
Yes.
Last time we spoke, I know that it was supposed to be grant funded and it had not been because the paperwork had not been submitted for the grant. And you were doing research on that. Where do we stand with that? Will they go retro and
If I could
reimburse us?
speak to someone at the federal government right now, I would be able to answer that. It's, right now, we're just kind of in a waiting period again. I will tell you, I talked with Scott Smith just a couple days ago. We're trying to get the payroll system worked out so that he can select SRO, and that portion will go, things are gonna start being routed to where they need to go. We're still keeping track of all of his hours for each reporting period and making sure that when we submit the financial reports, we know exactly how much we should be getting back. And for all of you who aren't aware, I'll just throw it out there, this SRO grant was, that's a different slide. Can I pick it up there?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I will just throw out my experience with grants, because the grant was awarded and it's a reporting issue, the funding should still come. Usually they'll work with you on that, as opposed to if you had hired the SRO before being awarded the grant, then it would not be retroactive. But
Good.
Right now, it's just a GL pass bucket issue, we're just not splitting it up.
We're just, yeah, we've pretty much been paying 100% of the salary, of our salary line. That's not much right for. Once we get it reimbursed. Any other questions for Ben Charlie? And school resource officer. Next slide. Originally, this was presented, just a communication error as federal 75%, local match of 25%, which was not accurate. The federal portion is 58.13%, and the town local match is 41.87%. So the 41.87% of the salary in the school has been budgeted into this line, which would be about $20,000. Again, anything outside of the SRO is in our full-time salary line. This was granted in 2023. He didn't start till spring of 2024. We've got 5 years to have a school resource officer for 3 out of those 5 years. Once those 3 years have been met, the town, by the grant, is required to sustain that position fully funded by the town at 100% for an additional 12 months.
only 1 year.
Only 1 year.
Yeah, only it's only-
And also, in case there's any question, the school does not pay for any of this right now. This is all grant and people funded.
Just out of curiosity, has the school, are they appreciating the SRO?
Oh, gosh,
Are they
yeah.
feeling like, I imagine they would be, but.
He's doing so much over there, like, we had to get together to do the performance reports, we, listing out all the things he's done with the community, with the school, teacher parent, like, all kinds of stuff, like, they like having it, for
So
sure.
there is potential in that here, and if we wanted to continue this position moving forward, that down the line, we could split.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, overtime, again, this is always way underfunded because we're paying a lot of overtime to cover the full-time salaries of officers that can't work. So, really, between 2022 and 2025, we've averaged $41,000 over budget, which would bring us up to what? Do my math. 86 or whatever, thousand, and I'm asking for 65 in hopes that once we get full staffed, that full-time line goes up, it's going to keep the overtime down, but you still have 25 weeks of vacation, we have 3 people who are still active military, that are gone 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends out of the summer, sick days, bereavement, all those other things that need to be covered, so, and then with the salary increases, I bumped that up to 65. Okay, special ops, this is the Central New Hampshire Special Operations Unit. We're part of a mutual aid agreement with all the participating communities. The SOU is one of 11 tactical teams across the state. They come in when we have high-risk search warrants, high-risk arrest warrants, really bad folks, bad people, barricaded subjects, search and rescue efforts, things of that nature. They train 1 to 2 times a month, 12 months a year. They've got the Bearcat, they've got the armored vehicle. They just have far more training and experience than any local PD can provide to their patrol staff. We've used them multiple times in the years that I've been in Allentown. And at least since 2022, the fee per year has been $3,000. In 2025, that fee went up to $3,500, but with the default, we only got 3,000, so we had to come up with an extra 500. So that's not gonna change. It is $3,500, so that's what I put. And our trading cards, and a lovely picture of Jessica. Sergeant Bowen is the tactical operator and a team leader on the SOU. Lieutenant Michael Bowen is a crisis negotiator, and I am the treasurer for the executive board, and Jessica is the secretary on the executive board. So we have a very active role with this organization, so I'd like to keep it and be able to pay for it. Dispatch, no issues here. It's gonna be pretty much the same as last year. I've already got the quote, the bill for it, so we're perfect right where we are. No changes needed. Okay, sewer, we're good there. $100. Any questions? I did dump it down a little bit, just because you can see we haven't really been reaching 500, so I kept it at 300, because a couple times we've gone over 2, so it falls in between 2 and 300, I want to make sure it's better. Okay, PD maintenance, I kept this right where it's at, for the simple reason that it would appear that in 2024, we did anything we could possibly do to fix the building, so we shouldn't need any repairs or maintenance for quite some time. Anything can happen, obviously, like the system can, fail, and we'll have to deal with that. It might go over 8, it might not, but.
So you do have a capital reserve account for that too, right?
We have a that doesn't have much in it. It's got maybe $8,000, I think. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not something I would rely on for big ticket items. Okay, heat. Everybody knows heat costs have gone up. I adjusted that a little bit to make sure we're covered. We're projected to spend about $3,200 this year. I increased to $3,400 just to have a little bit of a buffer for heat.
Was part of that reno, was any of that like insulation?
That's a really good question. No.
Huh. Okay.
No. It was all basement carpets. There might have been some, I think, maybe a little piece of our roof blew off or something, but nothing insulation.
Thank you.
Electric, yep, that needs to be funded a little bit better. As you can see, from 2022 to 25, it consistently is going up $1,000 just about every year. This year, I mean, we joke about it now. I made a comment that nobody's to work in the police department with the lights on. Nobody turns the lights on.
Oh, no.
They know I'm joking, but
Yeah.
our admin assistant works in the dark every single day, but whatever. So we have been trying to watch our electricity, but again, that's gonna continue to rise, so I bumped it up to 20.
Well, it's tough too, you guys are open 24 hours a day. It's
Yeah,
not
and
like,
the
they're not-
officers are in the middle of the night working on reports, and there's some lights I don't know how to shut off. I
Yeah.
can't find the switch, and they've been on for 18 years, so I
We
don't.
have a few like that in our office.
All right, last
$1,000 a
slide.
month electric bill, what is running? There's gotta be a way to figure out what's costing $1,000 a month.
You have a server room?
Yes,
Yeah, that's gonna be a big hit.
yep.
Because you have to cool it, server room. Okay, you have to constantly keep it cool, otherwise you're not burning out the servers.
Thank you. All right, last one. So this has been expanded for 2026. This line used to cover just cruisers. And historically, what we've done is each year we would purchase a new cruiser and we would rotate out the oldest cruiser. Either it becomes the chief's car or it goes to another department head, building inspector, fire, road agent. So the life of a cruiser, once we buy it, is about 9 to 10 years with the town. That said, by the time we rotate them out, they probably got well over 100,000 miles, and they're not gentle miles, because we're using them as cruisers to get up and go quite frequently. In 2025, with the default budget, we wound up being about $9,000 over. And that was with a $15,000 payment on the last payment for the pickup truck. So, I mean, again, prices are just going up. If we continue to keep up with this rotation to make sure we don't have major issues.
This number is different than what was
What's that?
given to us on our material, I think.
Well, that's capital outlay.
Oh, is that why? Okay, because I'm
Yeah.
looking at the capital police vehicles at 61,000. That was 51,000.
I think if you go to page 33, Page 33?
Yeah, it's down at the end. Number here. There's capital software,
Okay.
capital highway, capital fire, capital police. It shows it funded at 51,000. It shows the request at 61,000. And it is that budget line is the 4902-18752.
Yep. So that is not correct.
Okay, so it should be.
It should be like this slide, yes.
Elaine,
If we,
Yeah.
that line has typically been only for the purchase of a vehicle.
Correct.
I believe you're changing it.
yes, to include machinery, vehicles, and long-term, major equipment.
That's why those numbers don't match up.
Okay.
It's only for the vehicles historically. This
Okay.
year, I didn't pick up on.
Okay, so you were proposing 61 in your mind for this line, 61 for the vehicles, the additional is gonna go towards.
The next part I'm about to, yeah. Is everybody clear on that right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. All right, so new in 2026, we've expanded it to include other major long-term expenditures. The biggest one being our tasers. You can see right now I've got the Taser X2. This particular model, I think we have 3 refurbished ones now, which could mean many different things. They do work, but maybe the central information display doesn't work. That doesn't happen to be the case with ours, but if one of them fails, we have a major fault, Axon will no longer support them, warranty them, fix them. You have to go to a third-party vendor and try and find one that someone else has turned in when they upgraded and take that in. Like I said, we have 2 or 3 that are in that category right now. My proposal would be to get the Taser 10. There's a Taser 7 on the in-between, which logistically in its usage is not good. It has 2 cartridges for close quarters if you're super close, and then if you're far away. But in order to switch back and forth when you're in the heat of a fight, you gotta twist your wrist and line it up. It's terrible. The Taser 10 works very much like a regular firearm that we train with all the time. You shoot one dart, you shoot the other dart. You don't have to, when someone's moving away from you and running, try and line up 2 darts that come out at the same time, try to land one in the small of the back and one in the thigh. That's where this is so much more like superior. You get independent shots, and you have 10 shots in order to create that incapacitation. I won't get into the whole Taser thing. But this is their newest. This is the one that they're really pushing. Officer Vincent just went to his Taser recertification, and everyone there, except for a couple of people, trained with that. I have not trained with it personally, but he said it's far superior than the ones we have now that are phasing out. The contract that I looked at with Axon, the gentleman I've been speaking with, they're expensive. They're very sophisticated. They are all assigned electronically through software systems to individual officers. If someone breaks or something, it's not as easy to say, hey, use this person's, because if you shoot someone, that person's gonna have all of their information attached to that interaction. So I would like to see us move to these. The quote for all of them was, I don't have it.
$20,000 looking
No.
at the other one.
No, so basically, so it's split up into a 5-year plan, payment plan. It was 72, something like that, so
Over
whatever
5 years.
divided by 5, the yearly cost to upgrade to 11 of these units, to include all the cartridges that get replaced when you use them, all the handles, all the training, the big Halt suit you put on for training where you can get tased but not real tasers, virtual reality headsets to assist with training scenarios, would be $13,416 per year for 5 years. And in that 5 years, they're warranted.
Talking to a salesperson? So is all this negotiable?
So he did say that there was one part that was negotiable, like $2,000. I think it might have been some sort of tax thing or something, but, I can certainly ask as well.
I would love to chat with you after.
Let's do it.
Yeah, cool.
Not
Because
today,
If
though,
he
'cause I got
says
the.
$2,000 negotiable, all of it's negotiable. Guaranteed. I've
Okay.
been doing it my entire career. It's negotiable.
Really quick on the tasers. Seeing as if they're assigned to an officer, officer, what happens when an officer leaves that? Can that, get reprogrammed to a new officer?
Yes. If it's anything like these though, it's not as simple as just going, whoop, here you go. Like you gotta plug them in, you gotta go to this software, you gotta go to this. I'm hoping that these would be a little bit more sophisticated than that. The other things with these is, for us to keep these updated quarterly, I have to go in, plug them all in, update the firmware, update everything for all 11 tasers. With these, when you put them on the recharging bay, it automatically updates everything all the time. So there's no need for all that extra stuff behind the scenes to make sure that they're working properly and have it right.
And then how many, manufacturers can you choose from for these tasers?
I have not ever heard of a police force using anything other than Axon for
Okay.
tasers.
So it's really, you know, to
It's
the
quite
point of
hard.
negotiations, it's really kind of hard when it's like, you know, you either take it or you don't almost, right?
Yeah, because anything else, I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
they've been around for so long, they own the market on it, like, they've got drones that go up in the air and go, you know, check out incidences before the police arrive to see if the police even need to go, like, they're just, it's amazing what they do, so they pretty much own the market on it.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Any other questions of the,
Yeah.
It was the end.
any other questions of Chief Towers?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you prepared to vote on this, or?
I would prefer not to. I would like this session for us to listen, get some question and answers. I'd like time to work with the numbers throughout the week, come up with any proposals that we may think of, and then vote at the next session after we've heard all of the budgets.
Okay.
Everything is very interactive with the budget.
Yeah,
So,
that works,
yeah, so
Okay.
looking at trying to make a certain amount of cuts or conserve, it's important to see the big picture. And I
Because
think-
that's what the budget committee's doing, you know, we're just
Yeah.
gonna, after the Board of Selectmen have done their thing, then we'll go in and vote on our thing.
Okay.
Okay, so there'll be no voting today. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute quick break. Going through the packet. All right,
So I'll start off by just one quick note, it's not in my PowerPoint, but I want to make sure you point out the fact that if you look at that on the very first line, it says ambulance public safety. You notice that line, it says 186 of this year, but it's going down to 0, as it was proposed the same thing last year for 2024. So when we start to get into the salary line, you'll see some stuff that I'll explain there, because that does show 0, but in reality, some of that factored into my budget for the year for this year that we had there. So if there's any questions on it as you go through, just remind me or I'll clarify that, so. Derek, thank you, fire chief.
Gotta speak with the chest.
Yeah, so, John. So just a little bit about it, so you guys here, I know we have some new budget committees here, is just the sort of how we got to where we are, is basically and how we staff. So right now, I run, if you read it, I do a quick note, is we run enough to cover an ambulance with 2 people every single day. The state's minimum rule states that, a lot of the state dictate how we have to operate the ambulance. And it's been pretty static for many years. Everybody good with that slide? So right now, we have 2 firefighter EMTs that are staffing the station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those staffing models make it so they can do both jobs, and it applies to the ambulance service being brought into the fire department. So right now, so everybody sees the visuals, when I try to explain this budget and what we need it for. Each group, there's 4 groups that rotate at the fire station. They work 24-hour shifts, and they're all assigned. And we have 6 full-time people, and then there's 2 groups that are per diem shift coverage. So those basically are full-time people. They are people that are under the department that work anywhere from 12 to 24 hours to help cover those duty shifts on a regular basis. So that's kind of so what it looks like, and just a quick explanation, if you look at the colors, those are the groups and how they rotate. They work 24 on, 2 days off, 24 on, and then 4 days off. And they rotate between, and those per diems floating are on group 2 right now. So those ones will be in there, as they show up as a group assignment. Any questions? We'll move on to the next. So we'll start off with the first line. When you look at the full-time salaries, which is for those 6 full-time people that rotate through, you'll notice that the increase in the budget from 25 to 26 goes up a substantial amount. And basically that is based on that ambulance line disappearing, and that applies to a couple other lines as we go through. So this year, as we go along, just for the salary part, we do utilize the revolving fund to help pay for one base salary and retirement and benefits. Out of that, for retirement and Medicare, so that equates to the reduction in the line of $62,572, bringing the taxable amount that comes out of my budget to $302,000. So that's for the 6 employees.
Okay, I just want to point out real quick that the way it was presented, I did not understand that. I thought the money that you said was coming out of EMS was gonna supplement the 302 request. So the actual proposed budget is 365, 344.
The actual proposed budget from the fire department is $302,772.
Okay.
So-
But the operating, you're gonna need 365, 344 to
That's
cover the
correct.
staff costs.
That's correct, and at the end of it, there'll be an explanation and breakdown of what's coming from the revolving fund, so everybody can understand it and see it. So, next slide, John. So appropriated, this is for the administrative salaries, that includes myself, that includes the deputies, coordination for EMS on some items, in regards to like the captain. So in 2025, we originally proposed 100, and I think that was on. So, we had originally proposed $104,000 in 2025, for the 2025 budget, we went to default, so it defaulted to 68,000. As you look at the lines under your sheet, you'll see what we've actually spent out of there is more than that. And when we talk about that 186,000, you're gonna see as an overage in what we've spent this year versus what was there, and that is equated to that adjustment of the 186,000 being left at 0 for the year. So that absorption of that 186,000 comes into my budget, came into the budget, that's how it was factored last year, because of the default. So this year it's 117,000. So under the administrative salaries, last year was defaulted at 68,000. We've spent about 49,000, but our overall cost 104,000. That might be correct. I apologize. That is correct. The correct number. 104,000 that we need to cover the salaries of mine, the deputy chief, EMS coordinator proposal for this year.
Can you explain why there's only a month and a half left in the year and you're only at 49,000, but you anticipate that it's gonna go up to 104?
So throughout this year, as we adjusted, what ended up happening is working with Scott. When you do, that's equated to the SRO being taken out of the wrong area. Some of those funds were applied to the part-time salary line, which you'll see is close to being overspent.
Okay, so this is like a corrective measure.
Yeah, so we're working, and I actually was talking to Scott and Veronica last week, after our meeting, to work on changing those, because what happens in the system is it has one line that says part-time salaries, but you can put sublines underneath it. What's happening is they're not grabbing the sublines, they're grabbing the main head.
Part-time.
So that's why you're gonna see that difference in there, so that's just.
Okay, thank you.
The next line we come down to is the per diem salaries. The same thing as last year, as we defaulted, we had a rating proposed 116,000 last year. We defaulted, so it was left at the 69,000. Again, that $186,000 we see there, that's at 0. That's where the absorption came in this year for that overall budget, which included ambulance and fire department, for the bottom line. So that is what the need is for the 2 per diem shifts that we fill every week. That's the amount needed to cover that. So the reason why, and part of it this year, when we went this year. But as we go through, when we get to the end, I will show you the breakdown of what we're gonna utilize out of that fund this year. Next one, John. No change in details. This year we spent about $2,600, and that detail is usually for example, we had to go to Olympus yesterday and they didn't have a fire alarm system, and by state code, we have to post a fire watch there to make sure that they can open their business. If we shut them down, it turns into more legal woes on us. So either they do a fire watch or we do a fire watch, and they cannot, so we have to pay for somebody at a detail rate to be there until such time that system is up and running. So, and it goes for like things like, we've done before down at Canal Street Mill, apartments, and sometimes if something breaks, we need a fire watch, we have to post it there to make sure that we're covering our, the town's butt when it comes to liability, so.
Do they get billed for that?
They do.
So there's offsetting revenues?
There is. Next one. This budget is for our fire inspector. Loring has been here and done a pretty good job. He has been promoted. He's now a deputy chief based on some structure changes we did this year. It was supposed to be $19,850 last year, but obviously we went through the fall. So this year we're looking for the $26,000 based on his hour increase and the promotion factor. And again, this year, part of it we had to take out of the revolving fund, and that $150,000 was approved to spend. So this year coming up, there's projections of Loring now helps out with training and fire inspector items. So, and as we go along, there is a projected possibility of more construction in town with McDonald's, with potentially the change of Avishans and wherever they're gonna go, or whoever buys the Rite Aid building. I know there's other things in the work where the top of the hill was bought by Bywise, so Loring is a valuable asset that we use to do fire inspections, plans review, and all those things, and that takes up a good amount of his time to get that stuff done, so that's why we have the salary.
So, in the description, it says part diem, I'm guessing that was a.
Part-time.
I didn't know, okay, if that's part-time or per diem, I was like, there's a typo somewhere.
Yeah.
So he is a part-time employee, why is he separated out from the other part-time salaries?
So when we originally made him the fire inspector, what we wanted to do is track his hours and time. And a lot of that was originally outlined as we go along to be used for the administrative purposes to
Was
track.
he originally per diem and then
No.
changed to part-time?
No.
Okay, I was wondering,
No.
like, per
He was-
diem, you'd want to track that.
No, so he joined the fire department as a call member because he retired out of Salem and he was a fire inspector. So when he joined, he wanted to join to just help out. But we were in the process of building Hillsbrook and something else at the time. And I was relying on the state. Well, if you've been over at the state fire marshal's office, they are decimated for inspectors. So it was taking a substantial amount of time to get these things done, and Loring had the expertise. So I talked to the board at the time, and we brought him on as a part-time inspector to Eastburg, which is still, he's doing a lot right now, just when it comes to like 90 to 98 Main Street. All those things that company owns is, they have been out of code for years. So he's working with them to get them back to where they need to be, code-wise. So.
Thank you.
Eric, do the per diem staff, do they get any benefits?
No. No, so and that's what we usually do with them is, and it's as I've explained to the board many times, per diem is a vicious cycle, because and we ran into it in the past 2 months where it's not their full-time job and they sign up for a 24-hour shift and it's sunny out on Sunday and they don't feel like coming. That's the risk of having a per diem and not having a permanent person because you can't retain them. So they don't get any benefits because they're considered, I would say they used to be considered temporary employees like all the call firefighters used to be. So they don't get any benefits for that. Next one, Jim. Computer services, you'll notice that this line is a little bit underspent this year. It's only at about 5,100. I know we have a payment coming out, I think, this week or next week, which will bring it probably closer to 6,500. But we have 2 computers that are due to be replaced by CCS this coming year. So that's why the number has stayed level funded where it was, is because the average cost of a computer changeover is about $2,500. So working with them, I don't want to increase it too much, we can make do with what we have. When we, contracted services, and you guys are gonna notice in this sheet, the narrative and the number are not correct. Originally, I put some stuff in there, I gave, and it's my fault because I shortened this change on Thursday morning, so I'll take the blame for it. I think we gave it to Scott, but if you look at the screen, our cost to bill out ambulance services, because when I say that our call volume has gone up, it has gone up significantly, with Hillsbrook and all the developments, at the end I'll show you a graph of where we're at. But our billing cost went from a flat rate of $750 a month to, as soon as you get over 750 calls a year, it now becomes a percentage. And I know you'll ask, yes, we're negotiating. So that, come January 1st, with all the balance billing changes in the state, we're gonna have to talk with them about the new state's contract and what they voted in the Senate for Senate Bill 245. We're gonna have to sign a contract with the state for Medicare and stuff like that. So, our cost for billing has been roughly about that, and this line also includes, right now, we run, there's 3 levels for service. We have an EMT basic, an advanced EMT, and a paramedic. EMT basis is exactly what it is. You do the basic skills, it's minimal medications, and the advanced moves up to now, which is what I am, is we do IVs. I think you can do 12 or 13 meds in the field, and essentially do other advanced care levels for the patients. Paramedics are the highest level. They have the 52 medications that they can give. They can do very advanced things like putting a tube in your chest, breathe, giving you a trach tracheotomy if they need to. So we don't have, I think we only have 4, and none of them are on our staff full-time. Some work for diem shifts. So what that means is if we have a day where there's only an advanced level coverage, and especially at this time of year when it comes to respiratory stuff, we have to call for a paramedic on the outside. And the average cost for a paramedic in us up from any town around us is $549 every time. We charge the same if we have a medic and we send them out there, but it doesn't have to be for us because we're not staffed with medics all the time. So part of that cost there is taking the numbers of what we've averaged for paramedic in a subsequent year and adding it to that. So, and that's in our contracted services, and it has been since we started this service. So my goal is to take the $10,000 to offset those costs. And usually that's the cost of covering the paramedic intercepts. Because billing has been consistently about $1,900 a month for EMS billing, from EMAX medical billing, and that all depends on what our call volume is. We've had bills as high as $3,300 and as low as $1,500 when it comes to that service. We did have some very busy months in the beginning of the year, and that's where that cost increased. So when we start negotiating this year, we're going to start talking with them about percentage rates. They have been amazing for us. They've done a lot of good work. So I'm collecting revenue for us. We're not performing with our bill revenue. Computer software. So this line takes care of our computer software when it comes to scheduling for reading shifts. It goes to our fire reporting software, which is changing as of January 1st. When we get calls from the dispatch center, they have to export times, call numbers, all the details to our reporting software, and that's usually about $1,000 to $1,600 a year. It also includes our notification software. So right now, if you hear a beep go off my phone, that usually means it's a call coming in. Those are the things that alert us to the calls coming on along with our digital pagers that we have, which I have on my side too. So that increase is based on 2 things. There's another, when you talk about the CAD software, when the dispatch center is through the thing called Crew Force. So now they track where we are. The reason why they track where we are is if we're not close to the border of town, they're going to start the mutual ambulance to make sure the responsible. Part of the things that we are included that we have to take. So, and that includes the new software that we have related to that.
So, looking at the history of this, it looks like 4,000 was appropriately in the range. Are you saying because of these new additions, you expect the cost of that software to increase by $2,000?
That's correct. And the other reason why is because the state, the We don't like that system. So, because it was kind of convoluted when you put codes in, you couldn't tell, if you went to a house fire, it would say other structure fire, or it wouldn't delineate like car fire, it would just say building fire, structure fire. The federal government has now changed, we have a thing called nearest, which is coming in, we're starting to onboard now, but starting January first, we have to flip to that. So we have to pay the additional costs to flip to that, not by our choice.
Okay, so that will come out of this computer software line?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Are you looking at a decrease for the following year? And it sounds like some of this consumption is based off of the implementation.
It is, it depends on what, so a lot of this stuff is dictated by them, so like the dispatch and the crew force, when we get down to EMS supplies, there's some stuff that comes with that. They dictate how we have to operate
Yep.
systems. So they say, hey, you need to have, so like iPads, right? And when we're going out, is I have to have an iPad to put that on. When we transport to the hospital, EMS now requires the state of New Hampshire or the hospital, our receiving hospitals now, have a new way that you patch into the hospital. You can't just pick up the radio now and call into a hospital and give a patch because you have crowding in the ER. Now we have a thing on an iPad, we have to come in with this is the priority, this is what we have to do. Elliot, we've just kicked off the Elliot, and there's hospitals that start to come in the next 6 months. So as we go along, that'll be part of the thing that I go. So, but, you good, John? Cellular services, that's what I was just talking about. So part of the increase, we had it says 2,100, but 2,500 last year. I think that was from the default, but we had 2,500. I could be wrong.
That's 2,500.
2,500. So basically that pays for the department head cell phone, and it also pays for those changes. Each ambulance has to have the iPad for reporting for that Tiger Connect, is what they call it, the patching in. And it requires us not only to have to have the iPad for that, we also have to have a cell phone. So if they don't understand what we're putting through, they call that cell phone to get a patch. So we're not talking on the radio. We still talk on the radio. If they break down and we actually have to use the radios, we'll still patch through the radios. But those are the things that are there. And what that pays for is we look at our cardiac monitors. When we go to the hospital, if I pick somebody up who's having a heart attack and they call it a STEMI, so having a really bad heart attack, they want to know instantaneously so that way they can open the cath lab and get you there as soon as possible. What those iPads are used for also is they are a hotspot for that. So as soon as they push the 12-lead button, if they transmit it to the hospitals, they get something on their monitor that says, hey, look at this right now, because this person has to go to the cath lab. That's another thing that we have to provide for them when it comes to transport.
Is that also supported by AT&T?
They are by AT&T.
And how many IMEI numbers do you have registered with AT&T right now? So it sounds like you have 4 cell phones?
I have
And then
4 iPads, and soon it's 2 cell phones.
So 6 devices.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we could look to see if AT&T or Verizon or someone would give us a whole package
umbrella.
for
That's
town?
So they
so I'm asking
do.
the question.
They do now, and what happens is the reason why we're with AT&T is they provide FirstNet, which was what the governor decided 5 years ago to be the cell carrier for emergency response. What that does for us is, if we have a windstorm here right now, they take priority on all the towers. And essentially that means we can talk to anybody, we will have full bars and access to that. If we flip the switch and says it's an emergency, we have that access. The PD, myself, are all under that same umbrella of AT&T FirstNet. So, and that includes, what happens is, if you're an AT&T customer, you're in the fire department, right? I don't pay your bill as a fire department, but now your number can be listed in there, so that if I as a chief say, I need to activate this, your line becomes a priority, and they can still talk to you. So Verizon doesn't offer that, I know T-Mobile is.
No, AT&T is the network for that.
They are, so, and that's why we go with them, and I have talked to them, because recently, we had to do the iPad for crew force, and I asked them, and that's what we negotiated. I didn't pay anything for the iPad, but I had to pay $35 a month for the service. So.
Per unit, right?
Per unit, yeah. And that comes into if, what's included in that budget is if something breaks, you have an insurance policy, but you have a deductible and stuff, so, because we know humans are dropping stuff, so. Any other questions? New Hampshire State Firemen's Association, these are the dues for the members. The insurances that help pay for line of duty death items. They actually have memberships, and we get grant notifications through them along with the National Volunteer Fire Council. There's a subscription every year, and that goes along with dues and subscriptions are for also other things. Drawing a blank here. We pay dues and subscriptions to two other things. Drawing a blank. The Hampshire Fire Chiefs Association for and we pay subscriptions for background checks and stuff like that. Yes, thank you.
Looking at the history, I know this is nickel and diming, but it looks like in 2024, and I don't know if 2025 actual numbers have been fully billed, so
They
maybe.
have not.
Okay, so maybe that's part of the issue, because I was kind of wondering why it's staying. It seems like 1,500 would
Yeah.
cover that, but.
No, and some of these numbers, like we had talked about the other night, as I try to forecast what they're gonna be, like, when we get to the fire hydrants line, the second bill doesn't come in until December 1st.
Yeah.
So you'll see a $6,000 hit there that doesn't show up right now.
Yeah, it was hard looking at the actuals, because I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of things that.
Yeah, so, and, go ahead, John. Not much change, here except for, last year we were default $2,000. Last year was 2024 was a half year of the ambulance service. This was our 31st year of the full year. And when it comes to office supplies that we need, we have burned through quite a bit. So I'm predicting for next year that that's where we're gonna be at. Obviously, if it's lower than that, then it won't be spent, but.
So Eric, what are the department changes forthcoming
For,
for the increase?
That would cause a doubling of the
so,
supply budget.
we didn't, well, a lot of reportings is we have to print out copies of reports. Ink cartridges are, for the printers, about $125 to $170 a cartridge. We weren't printing a lot of stuff before, we print a whole lot now. When it comes to preparations for trainings and whatnot, because before we didn't have to do a lot of the required trainings, now we do. So when we do trainings, it's documentations, printing the training materials, if we need it, for the paper, that's there. Yeah, that's where it comes from.
And so it's basically printing.
Yeah.
You're printing it.
It's the
excess.
office supplies that we didn't use before, that we have to pay for now, and that's why it's over.
Do you think there's a world where we get away from that? And we use tablets?
Trying.
Look at all of us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right?
So here's a double-edged sword with that, is I am a tech guy, and you can ask Laura, like, I don't like paper, but the problem is the other people around me like paper. So that's why I have to stick to certain things. And we've been actually, you can, have negotiated with WB Mason, and we're working with them to get costs down. We actually got a decent reduction, because that number would have been higher, so.
So is that spend capability also transferable to PD in the town?
I asked.
I think it's worth talking about.
Well, John and I have gone back and forth quite a bit, because Amazon and WB Mason are good, and we're trying to see which one's gonna get the better price,
Sure.
so, absolutely. Good. Mailing stuff, I don't think I overspent this year, I usually don't, because again, I'm a digital guy, so. Next. This is for, so the food line is basically for, if we would have made an incident like the one on Granite Street, or if we have a training that we do, that we're gonna be there for a long time, like an 8-hour Saturday, if we go to the training grounds and do training, part of that food is to provide for them, while they're there. But mostly what we use it for, and I don't think I used all of it this year, but that is for incidents, that are prolonged, so, like now the brush fire season didn't go crazy, because that would have broke us. That's to cover those expenses when we have to run to Sully's or McDonald's to get food for the people, or refreshments that are at the scene, less than $1. So. The part-time salaries, I've gone up with the salaries this year, because like we had said before, as I predict by the end of the year that we're gonna be over on this line, we're pretty close right now. And what that is we have call firefighters are still in the fire department, and when we have incidents where they have to come back for, car accidents, building fires, farm activation sometimes, they have to come back. We had a pretty significant water problem at somebody's house where they had to stay there, and help them secure it. Granite Street was an extensive one, where a lot of people were there for quite a while. And the brush fires we had in the spring, if you guys remember the one at the what I did find out is this, I was just talking with the state forest fire warden 2 weeks ago with this brush fire season, is that the state used to be able to submit to get reimbursed for the salaries, and that changed, but now there's a possibility I might be able to start doing that again next year. So if we have a major brush incident, all the payroll has to be tracked, and I can actually bill it back to the state. But again, with the government shutdown, I don't know when that's gonna start happening, so I put that number right there. If we spend less, I would say that I'll be very responsible to make sure we stay down, but, that's where I predict we're gonna be next year with that. Next. Overtime, so as we all know, like when we took over the ambulance service for the people that were here when we were doing the transition, I always said 2024 was gonna be our transition year, and this would be a really telling year about where we're gonna be with payroll, staffing, stuff like that. Well, last year we predicted, and it was defaulted for $34,000 for overtime, and we've done really good with utilizing per diem people, to lower those costs of overtime. So I'm moving it down this year so that way we can actually do that and stay consistent. So if it changes next, I can't make any guarantees because like Beth, if you start to have a revolving door of people, then your overtime goes up. So I'm hopeful, so we've got enough on it that we stay where we need to stay. Next.
I have a question of John though, just for clarification purposes. In looking at the comparison year over year, so the fourth column is the actual expenditures this year, and that's through November 6th. Is that correct? The date of the report?
Excel report?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and
It's
we
as
only have.
current as when I printed it.
Okay, so there's really only 2 more months of expenditures to be listed in this, correct?
The rest of November and December, correct?
Correct, okay.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the numbers right.
So under the equipment testing, the increase there is because we did 2 things, is the cost of our hose and pump testing has gone up close to $700. But the one thing we have to do this year, coming up in the next year, which we didn't have to because when we bought the aerial truck, they paid for it, is we have to certify the aerial every single year, and it's a cost of about $1,800. They have an outside company comes in and they test the aerial as a third party to release the liability, and they give us recommendations. And when they come in, they don't just test it; they grease the whole aerial. They make sure they adjust all the chains and the cables that are on the truck to make sure that they're in a safe range. There's a lot of sensors on that truck because if you take it and tip it this way and it says it's going to tip over, it stops the truck from tipping over. Those are all the maintenance items that come with that testing process to make sure that they work properly. So,
But in your highest year, you expended less than $6,000, so even with that added, let's call it $2,000 expense, the $8,000 seems like it would still be sufficient.
because the year that you're referencing, we didn't do hose testing.
So none of 23, 24, or 25, none of those years?
No, and I have not, so the ladder test just happened 2 weeks ago, so I have not seen the invoice for that, and that was $3,600.
Okay, so that's not reflected
So
in the
that's not
45.
shown up,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
They just did it in November, like you guys are supposed to test hose in November. I said, you're crazy, they travel the country, that's what they do. They'll come in December too, I'm like, that's crazy.
Wow.
So.
They're go-getters.
Yeah. Fuel, so again, when we took over the last year, I had increased the fuel to $10,000, but it was defaulting on that, $800. This is our first year running the ambulance service 100%, so transporting costs money and burns fuel. And diesel has went down a little, but it's gone back up again, so I'm predicting we're probably gonna be around 11,000 next year. And if it's lower than that, bonus for us, but like you said, the prediction is for things to go up, so that should cover us for transport.
Use a single location for it?
We do, the Irving station. So what happened is, Chad might know better, the state had a negotiated price, and they usually negotiate it, it's lower, but they ended up losing that agreement, and it was about the same to go to the Irving station. If it changes, I'll gladly go back to the state, but right now we use Irving, and that's where the wet scars are attached to, so. Uniform's gonna stay the same. We did have a little bit, we're gonna come in pretty close to that one this year, due to promotions, and new hires. In the per diem world, we all know that, like I just said, you know, it's a vicious cycle, as the board will tell you. About every 3 months or 2 months, I have some that leave, and then some that come, we have a riding over there. We do like draft out closets for uniforms, but sometimes I have ones that don't fit the taller person. It's the same thing with gear, you have to outfit them where it needs to be. So, that's what, the cost is gonna be, it's gonna be $1,100. Personal protective, that's the replacement of our firefighting gear. That's anything from the hoods that are underneath it to boots, helmets, and we've done pretty well this year. They do show, what you show there is there are some items coming in. We just have to buy 4 helmets, 4 SCBA masks, and a bunch of gloves because structural firefighting gear by NFPA standard is only allowed to be used for 10 years to be covered for our liabilities. It's not supposed to be used past that. So that's why we had to buy the 4 helmets, the 4 SCBA masks. So the number that you see expended there is probably going to be probably $3,200 more than what you see there now because we had to buy it.
So again, looking at the history on this, it makes sense in 2024, we see a big bump to 7,774. You're just starting out, you probably had to buy everything new. It sounds like now you're on more of a replacement schedule. So to me, this seems like a line that could be lowered. That's just my personal opinion, just sharing that.
Yeah, and I would agree, but as we go along here, if I have to buy a set of gear, the average set of gear is almost $4,200 for one set. And that's for a coat and pants. That doesn't count for the boots, gloves, helmet. Helmets are about $400. So if somebody's gear is expiring this year, because it's the 10 years, I have to buy that set of gear. We've bought gear in the past couple of years and we've done pretty well. But when we bought that gear, we still had gear that was close to the expiration of being able to be used. So we take some of that gear and recycle it to use for training. We use it for our explorers, for our cadets and stuff like that because they're not going into our burning building. But for us, the people that actually go into the burning buildings, they have to have gear that's under 10 years old. If they go to the fire academy for a class, their gear has to be under 10 years old. So I would say that it has gone down and up, but if we have to replace that this year, which I intend to place at least one set of gear, that's half of that line. And that doesn't include if we have to have, if you have an emergency, if somebody's carrying gear, when they go to a fire, now I have to repair their coat or replace their coat.
Okay, so you have a replacement schedule of one full set of gear per year and that's not in the uniforms, that comes completely out of personal protection.
Personal protection, that's all that stuff that's there. And I say this for the sake of, as we look forward with the training grounds now, we're gonna have more training because we need it. We've been drastically lacking for the past 4 to 5 years because of staffing, age, we have a young department. So when we start to do those trainings, if they go there and they accidentally rip their sleeve, then $600 to send it out, have them patch it, and send it back. It's not like they have to go to a sewing shop and get it in. It has to be recertified by the company.
Reconditioned, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
Do we use a third-party reconditioning service?
We do, IPS is a vendor, so what happens is we've searched gear, we used to use Globe, which is the MSK one in Pittsfield, and their costs, when inflation hit, and their wait time was almost 12 months. So we've shopped around to use Firedex now, which is, IPS is coming out of Southern New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And when we negotiated that, we changed service plans for our SCBA filling station, because we had a third party for that was overly priced, so they do when it comes to the testing, they do the testing now.
They do it all.
They do it all together, and they get a discount by doing that, so.
Is there a capital reserve fund for something here? I thought there was.
There is, and we use, there is a fire equipment capital reserve fund. 2 years ago, we bought almost $36,000 worth of gear in there because we bought 10 cents a year for the expiring gear that was coming forward plus for the new hires. And the great part is if you don't know about cancer awareness stuff on the fire service, NFPA is starting to say, which we don't do because we couldn't afford it, is that everybody should have a second set of gear. So when we bought that gear, the full-time staff that are exposed to this carcinogens on a regular basis, they have 2 sets of gear because they have to work during the day. And if they come back, they have to take their gear off, put it in a wash machine, specifically for fire gear, and they still have to work that day. So they have a second set of gear so they can actually wear it that day and rotate through. And we're getting into the season right now, which I have to say it's been weird, we've been kind of busy with fires. They have to still staff that and they can't wear soaking gear because if they go to another fire, and they go into it, and it's wet, and they create steam, it's like pressure cooking their body. So they have second sets of gear for that purpose.
Is there any money left in the fund, or are we funding it?
I don't know the balance.
A little over 7,500.
Yeah, so that's, and the goal is, my goal in the future is working with the board and John, is as we start to figure out where we're at, is to do those capital reserve fills for, Beth had talked about the police station for the public safety capital reserve. It is about $88,000, and the intent was, when we finish the fire station, is to backfill that, but then we had the struggles with, finance and stuff like that, so we need to know where we're at before we put money in those accounts. So that's the goal.
Thank
Eric.
you for asking that question, because I was thinking it was weird that you would only spend $7,774 and re-outfitted a whole new, but that explains that.
Eric, I seem to recall, it's a few years ago, I'm not sure when, but there was a significant expenditure because we replaced the ear packs.
Yep.
And there's a life expectancy on those.
There
And I
is.
think we had purchased, if memory serves me right, 10 maybe?
20.
20, okay. So at what point do we have to start thinking about replacing those ear packs?
15 years, and when that happened, I wasn't the chief, but when that happened, we got a grant from the government to pay for those air packs. And there's another capital reserve that is life safety equipment, so basically it is air packs, because they're so expensive. They're $7,000 an air pack, to sometimes $16,000 an air pack. So that fund hasn't been funded in 2 years, but the goal is they expire in 15 years, so we got them in 2021. So we got 10 years to put money away, because I would assume they were gonna spend probably $225,000 to replace those in 8 to 10 years from now.
Because that was a significant expenditure.
It is, and those are the things we have to factor on, and even going forward with apparatus maintenance, I think, some of those things, those big hits, if we have a fire pump fail on a fire truck, having our capital reserve to make sure we take care of that too would be a great idea. So those are the future thoughts, to take care of some of that stuff. So, any more questions on that? You guys good?
Thank you, fire safety.
The fire safety equipment?
Yes.
And
That
then you have,
currently is at 102,885.
yeah, the life safety equipment,
That's the light.
it's going to be like, life safety, there's two of them, fire equipment and then life safety.
I'm not seeing the light safety.
There should be, there's two separate ones. We'll
I've
catch
got
up.
fire equipment and
Yeah.
fire safety equipment.
That's the fire
That's
safety.
the 102.
Yes.
Okay. So we still have time on that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And that's in my forefront thoughts, because we don't wanna wait until the 15th year, which is what we did last time, because then they're not certified and we're borrowing packs from the company for a year, waiting for our grant to come in and pay for it.
Right. Thank you.
All right?
Just have one thing. With like a lot of what I'm hearing on some of these lines, and granted, it might just be a small amount, 1,000 here, 2,000 here, but a lot of it is if we need this, like we're going over what you used and what we were budgeted for, you're going over what we've used, with an if we might need this. I guess probably I'm just thinking we gotta try to conserve everything, because we don't wanna get to the point that we're presenting the whole budget to the town and it's voted on and you end up back at default, because if it gets,
And that's why
we wanna avoid the default, so just if we could, I'm wondering why we budget so much on,
The reason why I leave some in
Yes.
there is because traditionally, looking back past these 23s, we have to predict, I try to predict what we're gonna spend. There might be changes, like, I don't know, if a truck is gonna, the pump's gonna blow up, and the apparatus maintenance line, that's $27,000. I can say, if we don't have that, but if it happens to happen, we have to take care of it. So the reason why I leave them where they are at, or when we talk about certain things, is I can guarantee you, most of the time, because we're gonna spend that money. So that's why reducing it, if I reduce it down, and then it happens, I use the fire hydrants line as an example. I can say that we don't use fire hydrants if we use them, but we have to pay that. If we reduce it down to 10,000, we still have to pay 13,000 because it's needed. And we have
yeah, but
that.
I'm talking more, I'm thinking more about like the equipment, like you had said, we expect to spend this, but we budgeted a couple $1,000s more, and we expect to, and on phone lines, you expect to spend this, but we're gonna budget a couple $1,000s more.
Because those are predictions, so
Right.
when it comes to that phone line, like the cell phone line, is if they up their rates, if I drop a phone and I have to pay for a screen repair, or somebody drives over the iPad and they leave it on the floor, those are the factors that I will do my best to not spend. But when you factor on it, we've seen those damages, I know the average of what they cost, and what's happened, you've already had to replace the screen on an iPad twice, it's got cracked, because they looked at the scene and the patient's parents stepped on it.
Don't we have, you said that we had insurance?
You do,
Budgeted in
but
there.
you have to pay the deductible on insurance. So there's usually like $100 deductible you have to pay to fix a $500 item. So we have to factor on that. If I don't spend it, great, but I plan on doing it because I know those things are gonna happen. People are human, and some of those things are gonna happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just saying, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
no.
just saying.
I'd rather you
I
ask
don't
so I
wanna
can
get us,
explain it.
I don't wanna get us up to that point that we're back in a default again.
No, and that's
A
why.
lot of these things are very, very reasonable and understandable, when we send it to the jail, they're gonna be looking, I mean,
Yeah.
any little 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, that we can bring it down, especially if we have the extra, funds for,
Yeah, and I agree with that, and when we
to be
did.
able to take from if it happens.
And when we, and I think I did, I know that, Beth has probably done the same, and I'm sure Chad has, but even this year, watching the pennies, and if you look at the bottom number on this one document, the overall budget is going to be down by a lot of money for the sake of being financially responsible, and that's what we've done, and Laura will tell you, I'm very much a forecaster, planning for certain things as it comes along, because I think we need to. I need to look 5 years ahead to make sure that we're gonna be in a good spot, so we don't overspend.
I'm just more concerned with the number that we're gonna present to the town,
Yeah,
because that's what the
And
voters
Vicki,
are
that's a
looking
good
at, the
point.
total number.
yeah.
You know, not just for the fire department, but for all
For
departments.
everything, just that
Because the
number that
more
we-
you go into default, year over year, the wider that gap
Yeah.
becomes to play catch up.
And
when you
then
look
they're
at
just
it-
gonna go in and they're gonna say, if we're not trying to
Right. It's a
keep
good
it
point.
down as much as possible, they're gonna vote it down, and you're gonna end up back to the
Yeah,
default
and
like
if you,
last
if
year.
you go to the last page and look at the overall budget, you're down by almost $150,000. So,
Yeah, I was just questioning as we're going, I mean, I totally get everything that you're saying, I was just wondering.
Another
Yeah.
important distinction is that they do have that revolving fund. We
Right.
haven't got the numbers from it yet to see what their earnings have been, but if the budget numbers were lower for that department, and if these
Right.
things happen that they're
That's
not
what I'm
sure,
talking
they
about.
could be covered out of that revolving
Yeah.
Right,
fund. So we
that's
could
what I'm
budget.
thinking about, is
Right.
that we
and,
have
In
enough
capital
in the
reserve
revolving
accounts or-
fund to cover all the
yeah.
ifs that might happen,
Yeah.
we can keep the total number down for the voters.
And when we talk about, when we get to the end, I'll show you some statistics on that fund that I've been doing this week, to explain to everybody, because I know there's gonna be some questions, is we have been doing very good with that, in regards to being financially responsible. We did have to hit it a lot last year because of the default budget, so we've made more in billing than I predicted this year, but we also, talking with Scott, our finance guy this week, we have spent some of it hasn't been taken out of it yet. But we've done pretty well with using a lot of funds. So next, 3,500. This line is specifically says firefighter equipment, it is not gear. So when you see PPE or protective equipment, this is cost related to, if we have to buy fire hose that fails the test, if we have to buy, valves for the engine that fails the test. When it comes to, repairs for things like the SCBA's that we have, this pays for those repairs on the fire equipment fund, line, to make sure that we have the things like, I will tell you, and Roger was on the department for a short amount of time, we went into the fire engine. Some of the, when you see us hook up to the fire hydrant, those two valves that go on the side of the hydrant were probably from 1942, and they were solid brass, something your dad probably used. So as we go along, some of them can't be used because they're out of date, and then second off, is they're just abused and need to be replaced. So those lines are there for that. One gate valve that goes on a fire hydrant is $700, which blows my mind because it's entirely the turn valve on it is $700. One of the intake valves that goes into the side of the truck that you hook the fire hose to is close to $3,500, just to buy one. So that line is actually extremely low for the equipment, but we've done pretty well with keeping it steady and having a replacement plan for our stuff that we kind of map out throughout the year to replace that. So I don't think we need to increase that at all. Fire prevention, prevention, this is things we do on fire prevention week. We hold an open house, which pay attention to next year. There's a big plan to do some different stuff, and this is just the cost for the materials to buy all the stuff for fire prevention. The little plastic helmets, the flyers, all that stuff that we do for that. In-house training, so this line pays for, so our call firefighters, have to do training. We have to do training in-house. Some of the training is done on duty, which obviously saves money, but some of it has to be done, for coordinating the training, paying for our in-house instructors to teach the trainings, and for, other items that kind of relate around the cost of people attending the training. So we track that, and this has been this way for years in regards to call firefighters, is to track the amount of training they do and to be able to cover those costs. This is for training, not for call response, not for details. This is basically for them to attend training and to be able to manage that in-house.
I thought that you had some programs going on, we were getting discounts on that. You were working with other
No,
entities.
that's the next one.
Okay, so that's only outside. In-house training is not affected by that. There's
No.
been no changes.
When we try to do as much as we can in-house, so we can actually, and that line has not changed since I've been the fire chief.
Okay, thank you.
The next line, this is the one that you're talking about.
Okay.
So that was $3,500 last year. Because we went to default, we had to pay for it out of the revolving fund. This year, we're, basically what this equates to is now that we're providing an ambulance service, the National Registry requires us to do, I have to do 24 hours of a refresher training, I have to do 12 hours of local time, I have to do 12 hours of my own time. So this cost pays for the software, much like Beth had Target Solutions on hers. We have a different company because for EMS stuff that basically does fire EMS. So this provides 20 members, including myself, these certification courses remotely to meet our certification requirements. Every 2 years as an EMT, you have to refresh your license, which I'm doing this year. I got a couple more left maybe. But we have to pay for those by the requirements of that EMT. So that's what that line is for. And it is down almost $1,000 because I found a vendor. Instead of Target Solutions, we went with Fire Rescue One of Lexipol, which doesn't do PD stuff, but they actually do better fire EMS stuff for us. So. Radio equipment, the increase that you see here. So our dispatch center right now is under a big upgrade. Instead of for the radio geeks in here, when you key your mic, think of it this way, it goes to the person you're talking to. And what the big change is now with digital versus analog is we have more towers and more departments that are on this dispatch center. So instead of it going straight to the person, it's breaking off in the middle. So they're upgrading their software and the actual tower software. So now it goes to Mark and then repeats to John. So in order to have that, when they do that, it's a single cast, it becomes a repeated or simulcast. So it creates a big circle to make sure the information, it'll bounce from like a cell phone, it'll go from tower to tower to tower to tower to make sure that we can talk. Why is that critical? It's because if I'm in a burning building and I hit my mayday button, it's not gonna go anywhere. If I can't communicate, if I'm in an ambulance and I need assistance for a paramedic and I can't key the mic and talk to our alarm, then they'll never get my message. So part of that $2,000 increase, well, all of it is we have to, in February, whether we choose to or not, we have to reprogram our radios to be on that repeat cast instead of the simulcast. All of our portables, all the mobile units in the vehicles. So I budgeted for it last year. Luckily, they postponed it until this year because they got a grant from to upgrade the system. So it's perfect timing for us to do it now. So that's why you see that increase.
Is that paying for like a third-party service to come in?
It is. And we have a radio guy, Paul St. Germain, and John Savelli, who can reprogram, but they don't have the capabilities of that software. Right. Exactly. So, any more questions?
Generally, repeating gives you longer range on the radio.
And that's what it's for. It's to give it that, we don't have that range. Like if you went to Beverly right now, and this is no word of a lie, last year, here we had somebody who had cardiac arrest. And as soon as we got over the hill by Hayes' Marsh, couldn't talk to anybody. if I went down to Bearbrook Gardens or the co-op and I went on the lower side, I could talk to everybody. I could go on this side, talk to everybody. We had to use cell phones trying to catch service.
Even
Where are
cell
you at?
phone will work up there.
Yeah, so we actually have a low band, an old low band frequency, which goes back to Ron's days, that actually transmits, but Farland doesn't use that frequency. We save them for that reason. When they do this upgrade, it's supposed to give us more coverage, so we can handle this. And that's part of their radio infrastructure that we don't do on our own, that's Concord Farland. So, anybody else? Telephones and internet access. So we have this year, I think we're pretty close to going over that line. And the reason why I say is we had to have, no, that makes sense. So we went over this year, we had an upgrade in phones, and the phone service. If you look at the year, before that, if you go back to 23, you actually look at the phone service based on history. We're at 4,000, and 24 we're at 5,000. So I've gone up to 4,800 because, again, we're at 4,700 this year. And we haven't, I think we have one more payment left in December. I think the phone bill just went through. So the reason we're at 4,800 is because I think that once we pay that, we should be pretty good. And the reason why I didn't go higher than that is because halfway through this year, when they upgraded the phone system, or the phone system, we had to spend money to buy new phones because ours were not compatible with the system they had. So they had to buy a new brand new phone. I think it was $500 brand new phones that we don't have to pay for next year. Next. Dispatch. So in 2023, we paid $45,000. Last year, or 2024, last year when we went to default, the number we had to pay, and we don't have a choice, we have to pay this. It's based on evaluations, and each town has to pay a certain percentage of what it costs for dispatch services. We went to default last year. It was supposed to be $48,500 last year. We actually, if you see that line, is overspent by $3,500. This year, the increase is up to $52,000. So when you look at it, we're actually going to have to pay for 25 and 26, and this is what why the increase is close to $7,000. And that's something we don't have a choice. We have to pay for it. That's right. Apparatus maintenance, as we go along, we're doing pretty well. We just put a set of tires on an ambulance. I know that budget line is probably about $14,000 right now. I think we're gonna come in very close to that number. And I think we've been lucky for the past 4 or 5 years. We've been able to stay under that number or around that number to make sure that we weren't going crazy, except for when the pumps blew up. Pumps blew up on a truck 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So that includes the cost of inspections, which we don't have to do anymore, but it also includes all the services, maintenance, tires, anything in regards to the repairs that we do there. And it doesn't include the live repairs, and that's why I say as we look to the future, we may want to look at a capital reserve. If an aerial seal goes or a pump seal goes, it's an average of $20,000. So in order to protect ourselves, it's something like that in the future. Next. Fire hydrants. We are going to be over this year for that. The budget this year is going to be about $12,800, and I would imagine with inflation or other costs, I bumped it up $1,000 to make sure we can cover that. I know it's $200, but I predict that we've had a lease price 3 years before that, and I think it's $168.75 per hydrant. When I talked to Matt Gagnon over at Covered Water, he said plan for an increase. So that's why you see the $13,200. Physicals and screenings, it's staying at $6,000, because what that is we have full-time staff, which we had before in the past. They used to do physicals under the NFPA and New Hampshire's presumption laws. We have to do an NFPA physical, and our full-time every year if they're over 40, every other year if they're under 40. This year, right now, we're under right now, because we've done the 3 that are over 40. I have 2 physicals that are going up this week. That's an average of about $700 a physical. So we're gonna be under on that line, but next year, we're gonna have to pay for 6 physicals for 6 full-time staff. So that's $6,000 will cover that, and that also includes if we have a new hire that comes in, when it comes to the per diems, they most of the time have their own physical, but if they have to send them to occupational health, then they have to go to the physical for that.
So every other year, the full staff has to go, or
Yeah.
just the full-time staff?
The full-time staff, that's 6 members.
So this, in every other year, is a line that would be, so it's normal to see that big fluctuation.
It is.
The following year, we would see this, good to
Very
know for
much so.
future budgets, thank you.
Kind of going back, my truck driving days, but, so outside of onboarding, right, from my experiences with DOT, physicals, we'd onboard, a company would pay for that, and moving forward, you'd utilize your own insurance to get your DOT card, or DOT physical, and then if there was a fee associated with it, the company would pay that. Do we have our firefighter, anybody else utilize their insurance as a whole?
No, because the NFPA insurance will cover it. Thanks to the same thing down in Hudson. It's an NFPA physical, those can range from $700 to $3,500 depending on how much you want them to do. And they check for specific things, if you have to go for cancer awareness stuff, and because of the risk to the job is chest x-ray, EFT, and an EKG.
Okay.
Your normal physical in a doctor's office does not do that. And if you do have a lot of times once the doctor says you have to have that, they don't include it. So under the NFPA, they cover all those bases because in the state of New Hampshire is if I get cancer as a firefighter, right, they have a thing called the presumption law. That basically says that if there's a disability that goes along with that, there is a coverage that goes along with that. And if we don't facilitate those physicals, now it comes back to us as the town because we put that liability on us as cancer. There's been many lawsuits where people have sued because they got cancer at their job. And it's nationwide, but firefighters having the chance of cancer, and that was one of them a few years ago that they were at risk of, is groin cancer, pancreatic cancer is almost a 40 to 50% more chance of not going to get it than the exposure to chemicals that you go to. That's why they have that presumption. EMS supplies, a big one last year, we had proposed to take a substantial amount, $18,000 last year, it didn't change, this is the same number, but we went to default, we only had $5,000. So out of the $130,000 we spent out of there, we had to pay for EMS supplies. You will see that some in the beginning of the year came out of the regular lines until I was actually allowed to, it was $7,000, allowed to spend in a revolving fund once the select board voted to be able to utilize those funds. This year I'm looking to do, 18,000 is what it costs. I'm looking to take $10,000 out of the revolving fund to offset those costs, leaving us to be just over what we spent this year is 8,000. As we go along, this is the one thing that I will tell you that to your what if, Vicki, when I work with the state, and I'll give you an example this year, is when we run an ambulance service, if they roll out a new protocol, or they roll out something you have to do, we have to do it. So this year they have nitrous oxide, so a paramedic can give you pain meds, morphine, all that stuff. An AEMT cannot. And when they rolled out, with the challenges of opioid addiction, nitrous oxide, like you have for your dentist, we can now use. So instead of me spending $500 to call for a paramedic, if you broke your ankle, I can give you nitrous oxide now. When the state rolled out the protocol, I had to spend $375 to buy the setup. So when it comes to that equipment, it makes it so we don't have to, if I use a revolving fund, I pay for it out of that, so.
Okay, so I have a discrepancy between the material that was presented to us. So the budget,
Yes, you
said that
do.
you were proposing 20,000, but you have
Yes.
since lowered it to 18?
Yeah, and that's why I pointed out to John this morning, as I did those short notice corrections with Scott.
Okay.
If you read the narrative on that, it's correct, but the numbers are incorrect.
Okay, I've updated, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, John, the next one. Sewer, no upgrade, we're close to that on the budget, I think we just gotta go
that. So in 2023, it's 7,000, then in '24, we have a negative 5,000. And then for 2025, 622.
Yeah, I'm not sure, that's an error on the form, that would be.
Yeah, that was all over the place. I had no idea. I didn't know if you got some special deal with the water department and now they're paying you
Yeah,
for
but I
the
don't
using
think
their
so.
water.
Yeah,
At
that's
every
gotta be-
fire, you gotta do an ad for the water company. I
Yeah,
don't know. Like, what is going on?
It's bad enough that they yell at us when we go use a fire hydrant training, you can't do that, don't touch it, don't use it that much. so.
Okay, so this 622 that's showing up as a 2025 actual is a bogus number? The water was more than 600
In 25,
And for 2025
Yeah, we
actual,
have
is
another-
that, like, that's a number we can trust?
yeah, and we have another bill, I believe that my house bill just came through, so I think we have another bill that just came through at like 300, so.
Okay, so 23s and 24s numbers are just
Yeah,
crazy
but that's
wild.
not
Okay, thank you.
13,000 on station maintenance, you'll see this year we're at about 10,000 now. I just had to repair, things, and that covers like our sprinkler system is 22 years old now, 24 years old, so they had to replace some valves in the sprinkler system. There's one more coming up that we just waiting for to have them replaced because, when impact fire, they come to our inspections, if it fails, and we have to change the backflow preventers and everything else, which we just did. So you're gonna see that number's probably gonna come in pretty close to 13,000, and we've done pretty well, we've been pretty lucky, so, I'm not changing that, because usually every single year, we've been right on that cusp, and we've done pretty well. Luckily, the roof repairs were 100% covered by the solar company this year, because that was like $60,000, so, we're good. Any other questions on that? Heating, if you notice the budget, the heating line right now is obviously a little bit low, but, we have to pay for, obviously, October, we're gonna see soon, with November's coming up. I would project us being pretty close to that.
So years past, 2023 and 2024, you were in the $5,000 range.
Mhm.
So it seems to me like you might end up there again. So to me, it seems like this might be a line that could take a small decrease if you're running about a $5,000 a year.
It might,
bill.
but this is the first year that the second floor has been completed and nothing to do. So that's why I say with the 8,500, I didn't wanna touch it, because if we bring it down, we still gotta pay the bill, we have more to face. I'm hoping that insulation, the spray foam that TSC is so great.
Well, you
it's
did
gonna
it
make
through
us-
last winter.
We did,
The second
but it
floor.
wasn't 100% complete. Oh, no, you are
So
correct.
then,
you are.
yeah, and the total for the year still came in at 45 through 24,
Yeah.
and if we add, I mean, it seems like, to me, that's a level, a reasonable expectation that you're gonna be in the $5,000 range for that heat.
That's something we can definitely look at, for sure.
Okay,
Well, that, one, my problem is like, the way it is with the winter, I don't think we're, like, December last year was not really cold.
And you never know when no one's
This
like
year
that.
could be really bad, so that's why I don't wanna say we're gonna go under and then go over. We can adjust the year afterwards, but I would rather be, conservative and make sure we're covered. Electricity costs, we're right on track, I think, we're pretty close, I haven't had the last bill come in, but I think it was at close to, 11, 13,000. The electric, yeah, we're at 12,000 now, so we have the two bunts, the two last bills to come in, which should put us pretty close to that 15,000 back. And I don't know, because the solar panels came off, maybe we're not on, but I don't know, they bring it back on. Alright, and so when you look at our overall budget, and I like to put the visuals up there because you have this here, is truly understanding what it takes to run this whole service. And I think sometimes those things we don't all see, because some things have been approved and have come out of directly from the revolving fund, some of it doesn't. So when you look at our budget last year, our overall budget with the Tri-Town money, Pembroke ambulance money there was $803,450, right? For us to operate this service without paying for the cardiac monitors and the ambulance, cost us $936,000. So our total coming out of the revolving fund this year will be $82,517, which lowers the budget down, lower than what I asked for last year, because last year I asked for $871.
Okay, excuse me a moment. I was just going over what you anticipate coming out of the revolving fund.
Yeah.
And I'm coming out, so correct me if I'm wrong, 62,572 for
Yeah.
part-time salaries, 30,000 for the
No.
billing contract.
That was the error on there, the contracted service, that's what I was saying, there's an error in what was written there. It's supposed, that line is supposed to be like I said, I did short notice changes with John on Thursday morning, and it didn't translate over. His 10,000 is coming out of there, 20,000 is gonna hit the budget.
Okay, so only 10,000, and then 18,000 is coming out for supplies.
So 10,000 is coming off for supplies, 8,000 is hitting the budget. If you, the narrative on that one was correct, but the numbers weren't.
So what's the total ESRF amount that you're proposing?
And that's what I'm getting to. So if you look at this budget, 572,000 is what's from the operational budget that we use every single day. So it reduces it down to 853. Last year I asked for 871, but based on the budget being financially responsible, us reworking some deals with some people, in regards to like our training and stuff, we've been able to come in at 853. Is where I predict us to be. That's only about a $50,000 increase for the budget, 6%. So I'd like to have that visual there so everybody can see it, because sometimes it's hard to process.
I just wanna, I don't like that, I don't like this presentation. I think your actual budget, what you are budgeting for, what you expect to spend in current expenses, regardless of the source, is $936,031. So that's the true increase.
Yeah.
How it
No,
gets funded,
no.
is it that what you're operating on?
Let me get to the end. Let me get to the end.
Are you gonna spend
I'm operating on the
930?
far right, 2026 tax rate
But
budget.
I'm not talking about tax, I'm talking about your actual, not where the money's coming
Yep.
from. You're
Yes.
spending 936.
Yes, I have to
Okay.
get, I gotta get to the end.
Okay, but I just wanna say, when I do a budget, what I wanna see is the actual budget, because things like the revolving fund, those capital reserve accounts, the Board of Selectmen have to authorize how that gets expended.
Yep.
So you may prepare to offer 102 out of the emergency services fund, but the board could direct you to spend 200 or 300 out
And we
of
certainly
that.
can.
So when the public's looking at that budget, or this committee's looking at that budget, they should see the total budget, everything that is being funded,
Yep.
not how it's being funded.
Yep.
I mean, you can offer that information, but
Yep.
they really need to be thinking about that total big
And
number.
that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
It's like our exposure is 936, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, if all of a sudden those funds dried up or the revolving fund didn't perform the way we thought, we would be on the
Yeah.
hook for the 936. That is the true operating expense.
Yes, so as we go through the budget year with the predictions of where we take the revenue and what's left in there, the revolving fund is designed for that. Yeah, and then when you look at the revolving fund, you're gonna see the number that there's this much in there. But as we've explained many times before, this is for those years that you talk about, when you have that liability, that fund is there for that. That's why we predict when we set up the whole fund, was the fact that as we take in revenue, we wanna only take so much out of that every year, so as we go along, when the capital purchase comes through, some of them, we can pay for that with capital reserve fund annually. When you get down here, and we'll show it, it's approved by the board and paid for 2 years now, is the board approved the purchase of the new ambulance out of that fund, which comes out of that fund automatically. They approved 2 cardiac monitors, which comes out of there. So our overall expenses will show, but what we actually hit the taxpayer with is what I present. Because every year as a fire chief, it's my job to make sure that we are utilizing those funds from there responsibly and not overexpending those and planning for the future, and that's why I'm saying like 5 years ahead. That's what I'm looking at. So can you go to the next slide? So out of the whole budget at 936,000, 82,572 is coming from the revolving fund. So like I said, is the overall expenses that we have to spend is 936 when it comes to operational stuff. And what actually taxpayers are gonna see is 853. Let's go back a couple years. If we had stayed with that realm of being with Pembroke still, we'd be paying close to $1 million with nothing coming back. So we are actually in a very good spot by utilizing it the way it is. Can you go to the next one, John? So when you look at that, that's what we're using out of that fund, and the areas that we're using it for is for contracted services, salaries, and our supplies. As we go along through the year, if something major comes up and we have to hit those funds, we can ask the board for that, or I can ask the board for that, and they can approve it or not approve it, because they have the control of that. So, go to the next one, John. So, also coming out of that fund every year, which was voted on by the board of selectmen, for the ambulance is a total of 8.5 years, and the cardiac monitor is a total of 5 years. We're in year number 2 with one monitor, year number 1, we just paid for the second one, is $94,000. That comes directly out of that fund, so it doesn't affect the taxpayers, and that's the way that it was set up and voted on by the board. So we are in a contract with those, and we have to pay for those, so you can put it into the actual budget, but we pay those directly by the RSA, to come directly out of that fund, and that's what the board voted for. So, here's the next slide. So if you look at it, the revolving fund, that's what we're utilizing out of that fund this coming year. That's what I'm asking for to use to cover those expenses that we have for the fire department. So when you look at the overall budget of what those things cost, what that service, if you wanna go to the next one, John? So to operate the service costs $1 million, but because we set up the revolving fund, and because of that, we could be paying $1 million to have EMS and a fire service that's only staffed Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. When we took over the service, we now have 24-hour-a-day coverage for both fire and EMS with an addition on the backside, and you have an ambulance service, and it costs probably close to $200,000, less than what it would cost to stay where we live. So that amount is what we utilize out of that fund. And as we go along here, and we predict the next 5 years out, we take in, and I got some preliminary numbers from Scott the other day, we've spent, by approval of the board, we were able to spend up to $260,000 out of that fund this year with the ambulance payments, the cardiac monitor payments, the operational payments, and the training grounds. We've been able to utilize those funds. We're under a little bit for what we plan on using right now, but that was close to $260,000. We're looking, and that's because we went through the default budget. But this prediction is about 176. We've taken in, minus the tri-town money that came in when we just dissolved, which is our fund to help offset. We've taken in about 217,000. We've made about 225,000. We have 2 months left to collect, so we might have a little bit extra in there. But those funds were designed, when we all discussed this and set the plan in motion, is as we grow, that fund is a capital reserve, expendable account by the board. So as we go along and we get to that next ambulance purchase, or if we wanna at least purchase a fire truck out of it, if we do well, you can pay for it out of there. The goal of mine in the next 5 years is to use it to offset some of that budget, so we can take $176,000 out a year. But to also leave some gains in there, like our capital reserve would do. So as we build up and we have a capital purchase, that we can do that without hitting the taxpayers. And that's specifically what the RSA states, and it states that we can use it for that. And you can only use it for those things. So when we go along purchasing that cardiac monitor, next year, depending on what the state says, there's a change in the IV pumps that are coming, that deliver medications. Those are the tune of $7,000 for two that we might have to spend. As we go along and predict those things, I'll do my best to keep it not happening, but this is kind of like where it helps the service run. So if we go to default next year and I have to take more money out, those blankets are supposed to stay there to help keep the service afloat. Because what happens is, this amount of money, and you can go to the next slide, John, if you don't mind. We've seen a significant increase in our calls, right? Just in the past 5 years, we've seen 50%, 45%, and we're not done for the year yet. So.
Is this
operation-
inclusive of fire calls?
This is inclusive of
This
fire.
is all calls.
This is all calls. But that increase that you see is EMS. There hasn't been a lot of increase in the fire calls, but our ambulance transports, and I'm hoping to get some of the stuff together that Kathleen has asked for by the next meeting, if I can pull that data out. But we've had a significant increase. So when you look at this, also come January 1st, we probably have to sign a contract with the state because balance billing ends. So there's potential that we might be able to make more money with the ambulance transports, which will be able to help us offset the budget more in the future. But I don't know what the crystal ball holds. So as we go along, taking $200,000 out of it this year and then next year, we're not gonna have a lot of gains above that funds from Pembroke. We're gonna have maybe $25,000 a year, but if we stay consistent, once we pay off cardiac monitors, then we get to a certain time where the CIP says you have to change them after 5 to 7 years. We might have the year gaps, we might be able to keep that money in there and then offset the budget for some of our expenses as we go around. But that's what that fund is there for. So the operating expenses do show up in reports. what we use out of that fund that I can print on a regular basis.
Okay.
So,
I have one question, so I'm gonna ask that you all kind of follow along with me, rather than me just throw out numbers, okay?
Yep.
So if you can go to page 17 of this report, and this is just so that I get clarification.
yep,
And there's probably others in the room that want that same clarification.
yep,
Okay, if you look at page 17, ambulance services.
yep.
So last year, we had to budget, right, because it was.
So that
we had-
line disappeared last year.
It
We went to
dis-
default.
Right, but it was 186,750.
The year before, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at current year budget on here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you go to page 22, I just wanna make sure I'm looking at this right, 'cause and if you go to current year budget for fire, way at the top, it's 616,700,
Yep,
okay? So that's 803,450.
yep.
Okay, so and if you go back to the page 17, nothing's budgeted for ambulance. And then the fire is budgeted at 845,459.
But the corrections on that be 853, yes.
Okay, so the increase to the overall budget, not counting anything you're gonna pull from the revolving fund, we're only looking at $42,009
Is the increase.
is the increase.
That's
Am I
correct.
right?
Add the 7,000, so it's about 50,000 because of that error correction when I.
Right, but that 50,000,
Mhm.
that's really an increase, I just wanna make sure I'm covering,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this
Yeah.
right, is really, because the monies that are gonna be coming out of the capital reserve fund
Yep,
is gonna offset that.
we're offsetting it to the point where the budget is low, so the actual operating cost, like, it was 936, if you take out the 82, it comes to 853. That is an increase. Last year I'd asked for 871, which was like a $65,000 increase.
Right, but just looking at this form here, the 186,750, and then the 670, whatever, put my
Yeah,
glasses on.
616,700.
616,700 is 803,450.
Yep,
And this year, the request, the department request, with maybe some adjustments that we're not aware of, but on this form, is 845.
853, yes,
But-
you're
Yeah.
you're correct.
But see, I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at it as the budget was 803,450 in 2025. The request, what the fire department needs to have funded is $936,031. And if we go back to prior, when we were still in Tri-Town in 2023, our total fire EMS operating budget was $637,199. So between that year to now fully
No.
operating on our own,
You're not factoring.
we've increased 298,000 in
No.
operational.
So-
Now, I know we got money back from Tri-Town,
No,
but there's,
what we did, so we would pay Tri-Town. So when I took over as the chief, we were paying $230,000 to $250,000 a year for the ambulance service, and our budget was 600,000 or 523,000. The following year, it went up to 602, but we were still paying Tri-Town. So in our dissolution years, when we said we're separating, they had presented their budget originally, which was $1,003,000, and we were gonna be claiming close to $300,000 out of that. We had said we were gonna separate in August, so they turned around and took all the capital expenses out of their budget and reduced it down to $142,000 because we were only doing that year. The next year, they charged us the full operations minus the capital reserve at $186,750. If we had paid for the full year, it would have been close to $400,000. So, and our budget was 616,000, and that was it stayed the same. So, come now, if you look at the numbers that are here, because we went to default, that number still showed up in the budget of paying 186,000, because that was the default number that we paid Tri-Town. And then you had the fire department budget, so it looked like our increase was gonna be 200 and something thousand, but really wasn't factual, because when you take those two numbers and squish it together, at 803,450, right? So that increase wasn't there. And the same thing last year, I had proposed a budget that was 960-something thousand to operate the service, but 803 or 871 is what I needed by offsetting the funds by the revolving fund, which is what we're supposed to be doing. So the only hit was 871, but then we went default, and we had to make the change and take more money out of the revolving fund. So when you look at the numbers, what we've done, like, and that's why I said it, put the number up there, it costs $1 million to run the service. If we were still where we were, we would be paying Chi-Town close to $400,000. We would be paying close to $600,000 for 2 full-time people from 8 to 5, and having a 38% no response to all the calls at night and on the weekends, and basically paying for a service that we weren't getting. So when we transitioned and we moved to our own service, it allowed us that fact of solving the problem of firefighters being out the door and making sure a fire truck could get to the street at 2:30 in the morning. And it also gave us the chance to do ambulance calls and take over the ambulance service, all by lowering the costs of what the projected future would be. Because right now with Hillsborough, like if you look at those call numbers, those are EMS numbers. Now we collect our billing revenue. It doesn't go to across the river, we collect the revenue. We use that revenue to offset our budget, so we can keep it at 853. That's what the taxpayers get hit with. If they build this second facility in Hillsborough, I fully expect those to go up like $200 a year. Because memory care is a gigantic nightmare when it comes to services. So when I look 5 years out, when I'm looking at that revolving fund, I'm looking at making sure we have enough there, to your point, that if we have a really bad year, that fund by state RSA is designed to be able to be like, oh my God, we need to make it this year, so we can get to the next year and hopefully pass the budget.
But from a taxpayer standpoint,
Yep.
Forgetting of, like you had said, where the sources are coming from, is it revolving fund, is it taxpayer money? It's safe to say that the operating budget for fire and EMS is $845,459.
Yeah,
thereabouts.
850, yeah. So 850, yeah.
853, right?
Yeah, 853,459.
Okay.
Make the correction.
And it could only be, that would be worst case scenario, knowing that if the Board of Selectmen approved to remove money from the revolving fund, that number goes less.
It could, if they choose to do that, yes.
Right.
Yep.
But the number, the 62,000 for salary, and then the adjusted, the 10,000 for the billing, whatever, and the 18 for supplies, that's already in this 845 number.
Yeah, yeah, all that,
Okay.
those offsets are there on purpose.
All right, I just needed clarification on
Because
that.
if that's the case, I'd be coming, if everything was paid, it'd be $1 million budget, and I don't.
So you're really below, I mean, when we started this, and last year, understanding it was the transitional year.
Yep.
You know, we had monies, you know, in the ambulance line, we had monies in the fire line, and it was just very convoluted.
Yep.
You know, but looking at a true picture this year, to operate fire and EMS is around $853,000.
Yep.
Okay,
So,
Thank you.
And as we grow, and that's what I say for the 5 years, is as we grow into this and as we do that, my goal is to do what we said from day one, which is to have that fund slowly grow. Kathleen had asked a question about $75,000, which was in the original proposal. Well, that $75,000 that was proposed actually pays for an ambulance now, because we had to buy a new ambulance to start off the service. So instead of leaving that there, now we pay the lease for it. So we have 2 ambulances that will last us the 9 years and get us through and put us in a good spot. Like I was thinking 10 years from now, it's gonna put us in a really good spot as we grow.
That was the point I was gonna, I don't know if you can figure this out, but if we stayed with Tri-Town, this would be something good to give to the public. If we had stayed with Tri-Town, where would we be right now?
We'd be paying $1 million.
To Tri-Town, not to
No,
Tri-Town.
so we would be,
Overall, total.
so your, yeah,
Total.
our total for the fire department and the ambulance would be about $1 million.
Right.
And
Okay.
last year
So we're
was,
basically saving that 175 or
we're
whatever.
saving the 175, like this year, when we went to default, we actually were 803, probably saved more than that, but we actually stole more out of that fund. But we should be trying to make that fund progressive so we can take care of some expenses. Cardiac monitors, when we bought them, thank God we did when we did, was about $47,000.
I needed to clarify it.
Right
you know, and I
now-
think everyone was kinda
Yeah.
looking at all these numbers, so I
Yeah.
thank you for that. I got a couple more questions though, and then we can, I know we're running behind here.
Yeah.
But when the fire station facility is used for training purposes, sometimes the
Yeah.
cars are worse than when they had drop off at school, I mean, they're all over the
Yeah.
place, right? Do we get paid rental fee when they come in
Yes,
to use your facility to do training?
yes.
Okay, and is that hourly or per event? How does that?
So it's negotiated based on what it is.
Okay.
Classes. So our training grounds is now I say complete, but it's complete enough that firemen can use our training grounds.
Okay, so when they pay to lease these facilities, I know there's one behind the highway garage, and of course, sometimes you're at the fire station. Okay, those monies, does it go into the revolving fund or the general fund?
It goes into the revolving fund.
Into the revolving
By the
fund, okay.
services, and that money is used as we factor this. As we go along, this is gonna be the first year of doing it, and how much we're gonna make. Those
Okay.
monies will be factored in, offsetting some of our budgets come the future.
Okay, my other question is billed versus received. Of course, my banking hat, and I've said it before, unless you've got the money, it's not a revenue, you know what I mean? It's a receivable
Yep.
until that point. So what has been billed and what has been received
So,
for ambulance service?
I can tell you, so if you look at those EMAX medical billing reports that I sent out, I think it's on the lines, been really trying to get to my quarterly report that I've been working on for 2.5 weeks now, but EMAX sent us a report.
Mhm.
And in there, they'll tell you everything we billed out, and then what we've collected on the bottom section.
Okay,
So it averages each month, so I know for the month of October, we billed out like $82,000, or September, sorry, we collected 18,000, right?
okay,
November, I should say that, I just got November's. We billed out probably 93,000, I think it was, for October, we collected 20,400. And those are reports that, by all means, if you want me to send it to you, I could.
I would
look
like
them up. If I
to
had a
see
computer,
them,
I could-
yeah,
I could
and
tell
there's
you.
probably some, they probably stray pending insurances or whatever.
Yeah, and they have the adjustments, so sometimes what they'll do is if
Right.
somebody might have paid that got billed in February, but they pay in August, those adjustments will be in there too.
Okay,
But there is a write-off too, like we have to go through, and this is something that the board's gonna have to deal with next year, is the write-offs, like what point do we write off what we're not gonna collect?
yeah,
Can I get
usually, and,
copies of those too? I've
You
been
do,
asking
yep.
since
yeah.
July.
No, I did
Usually
send over the
everything over
copies.
90 days, I know from a banking, but this is
Yeah.
kind of medical, if you will. They write them off as
Yes,
uncollectible,
yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
TriStar had like $1 million when we separated.
Right.
the three.
So if you could share that report with us, maybe
Absolutely.
to, send it to John, he can send it
And
out
that's the
to
one I
us.
sent you from EMAX before, and like I said, I've been trying to get I usually do quarterly reports.
Yeah, and
I
my
get that stuff out, but I
annual
haven't
little
yet.
breakdown of all calls that I request every year.
Will it do it for the full year though, because of like what she's
So-
talking about, you have that 90-day, you may have billed 90,000 in October and only collected 18, but then some of that comes in December. So
Yeah.
I want like a big picture of exactly how much the fund has taken in.
So you can do that, but what it does is, some of the skewing data is, it looks back not just to January 1st, it'll look back to the last November.
Okay.
So it tells you by November. So what I usually do is, I start from January 1st, because we run an annual budget, and I'm predicting on what we're taking in for that time frame and what we spent.
You lost it.
So that's what I like to track back when I do that.
Okay, and do we have a balance, or I haven't looked at the trustee report for what the balance is in the revolving
Yeah,
fund?
so right now, if you look at it, and I just spent the week with Scott, the finance guy, tracking down it. So they do the due to from thing, when they move money around. So if you look at the balance right now, it says we have 614,000 in there. But
Okay.
realistically, with the due to, the transfer that's supposed to come out, talking to Scott, it was 535, but we still have one more movement of money that's gonna be coming out. So it should be around like 470,
Okay,
but 77,000 is the next due.
would be the
come out.
revolving account balance as of year end, let's say.
As of year end, he has 77,000 to move out. I'm guessing, factoring low on the revolving fund, we spent probably 250, 255 is what we're gonna spend, I think.
Okay,
And then what we took in is probably gonna be close to 265, so it's not gonna be a big gain
so it'll
this
be
year.
right around there.
Yeah, and we've actually done, and I said this with the billing company we have, we've done quite well, because I only predicted us taking about 180,000 this year, and we're gonna do pretty well. And like I
Okay.
said, as the years grow, if we start to make more money, then we have more money to offset.
Okay. Any other questions of Eric? Thank you for the
That would be a
time.
good point to put out there somehow, because a lot of people are under the impression that the ambulance is costing us an enormous amount of money.
And it isn't. You know what I mean? If you factor in the two budgets.
And what we were paying for the service prior,
Well, and that was the forethought, and just so everybody knows, is the people who weren't on the boards at the time, is we looked at this in depth with the reports that came from the ambulance. You were on the board, we got to see the reports of the expenses, the projections. when you look at it, like, I'm thinking their overall budget this year, just by looking at inflation and costs and personnel costs, probably close to 1.4 to 1.6 million dollars. And we have to pay, you paid by call line. We were the lower people before, and they were the higher people, and we've done this. So now, their costs would go down, and our costs would have been going up. So looking forward, with all those data stuff that we're looking at, it made 100% sense for us to keep in-house, because you killed two birds. You saved money, and you saved somebody at the station 24 hours a day to get that fire truck out the door. You know, so it helped us in two ways.
Well, thank you very much for that. I
Thank
know
you
we're
very much.
running way behind here, but I know poor Armin has been sitting here. So Armin, I'm gonna let you go next, okay?